Anyone else? Well, we may have folks joining us through the meeting, and let's make sure that we catch everybody in the Java likes too. So, but welcome everyone. So first thing on the agenda today is approval of the December minutes, and they were sent out to you earlier. And so I hope everybody's had a chance to look through them.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
And if those are who are moving and seconding, if you could put that in the chat, that will help Diane, who is taking notes for us today. So just add a note in the chat. Thank you. We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second it since I'm at my first meeting back. Sally Ray.
Thank you. And the easiest way in some of these large sites is there any opposition? If so, please put it in the chat or say it out loud. And hearing none, we will move forward. I'm monitoring the chat right now, and I don't see any objections. So we will go on to the next item. Doug, I think we're going to change the order a little bit. We were starting to put up the budget report, and we'll do the budget treasurer's report first, and then we'll have Doug speak a little bit about the April 14th meeting.
Sure. I am the Dartep treasurer. I'm Beth Fighton, for those of you that I haven't met yet. 29 institutions are paid, so we are thrilled. U of D, I apologize, you're out of order, but to reorder all this and slide everybody down took more time than I had. But thank you, everybody, for paying. If there's any errors on there or you're missing, please let me know and I'll make any corrections. Our balance at the end of January, we're in good shape, over $17,000. So thanks to everybody again for getting those dues in. And that's it, unless anyone has questions.
Thank you, Beth. Doug has some information for the April 14th meeting, when we were all going to be in person again and in Holland.
Good morning, everyone. And first of all, let me apologize for the glare that is coming off the side of my head here. I was going to try to move my camera, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do that at this point. I wanted to update everyone on not only the April 14th Dartep meeting, but the conference at Hope College that precedes that the 2 days before on April 12 and 13. Your planning team is working hard and have been in constant contact with each other. And so just some updates for you here today. First of all, the cost of the conference is going up. Sorry, I tried to keep costs down, but the cost of the conference is going to be $125 for both days. And if you can only attend one of the 2 days, we can knock that down to $80 if that's your choice. Next week, you're going to get 2 emails from me through the Dartep listserv. The first email is going to be all things registration. It'll have a link to the registration for the conference. Within that, you should be able to get your hotel information if you need a hotel room. I can tell you right now that I've been able to secure not only the entire Hayworth Hotel on Hope's campus, but we've also got a block of rooms at City Flats this year. Cost of rooms, again, has gone up. It'll be $189. And those rates should remain solid until the middle of March. After the middle of March, they are asking that I release those rooms, and then it's first come, first serve. Again, the reason to inform you today is the hotels are hoping that you'll book your room if you need to by the middle of March. So 2 emails are coming. The first one is all about the registration. And this is separate from Dartep. This is only the conference on the 12th and the 13th. We will begin at 10 o'clock Wednesday morning. So some of you may want to drive in Tuesday night. Some of you may just choose to save that cost and come in on Wednesday morning. And we think by backing it up to 10 o'clock, you've now got a choice one way or the other. We plan on going till about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday. Thursday will be from 9 to that 4:30-ish time frame. And then we will turn it over to Dartep on Friday morning. And I'm not sure exactly when the Dartep meeting will begin, but I'm sure Marcia, Brian, and the team will be able to get that information out to you. The second email is really for you to give us an opportunity to use your expertise. For those of you that are new to the accreditation process in the state, it's a great state to be a part of in terms of accreditation work because it is a collaborative effort. And we're hoping that this year's conference does the same thing. Maybe some of you have recently gone through a site visit and have picked up some information. In that second email, I'll have a list of topics for Wednesday, and I will have a list of topics for Thursday. And we're hoping that you can offer some insight. There'll be 3 sessions happening at a time, and those sessions will run about 45 minutes apiece. And we're just hoping that if you've got some expertise in some of the areas that you let us know so that we can include you in the registry or in the schedule for the day. We're going to start right out with the accreditation process, Accreditation 101. For those of you, again, that are somewhat new to the game around here. And then we're going to go all the way into some real specific things about clinical experiences, core teaching practices, and maybe you can help us if you've got some expertise in any of these areas. So again, look for 2 emails from me next week. If you have any questions at this point in time, I'd be happy to answer, but I'll just be quiet at this point and turn it back over to Marcia.
Thank you, Doug. And yes, if you've never had a chance to attend the meeting in Hope around accreditation, it's a great chance to talk. And if you bring a team with you, there's usually some time to do the informal networking like that. And so it's a great opportunity to have that informal and formal conversations throughout both days to feel more comfortable and give insight. So I encourage everybody to try to attend that.
Doug, I do have a quick question. Is it going to be completely CAPE focused, or will there be some AQUIP things mixed in there?
Yes and yes. Really, it will fit whatever your accreditation process is going to be. There'll be a little bit of AQUIP in there. There'll be a little bit of CAPE in there. There'll be a little bit of just what's happening in the state of Michigan. And again, let's go back to core teaching practices. One of our sessions hopes to be designed around the assessment of those core teaching practices. How are you doing it at your college or university? You know, are you using GoReact videos? Are you using your student teaching evaluation? So again, the answer to that question is really yes and yes. And I should mention that there will be team time built in. So if you come with 3 or 4 or 5 from your university, we'll have time at the end of each day for you to sit with your team, spread out throughout the hotel, and hopefully that will give you some extra support for your accreditation process.
Thank you. Great additional information. Let's go on to organizational reports. MACD, Beth.
So right now we're just in the middle of planning, and just next week we're going to go into the planning session of thinking about a day on the Hill. And so we're going to be circling back about reinvigorating now that people can go places and we're opening back up. How do we make our voices heard? There's been conversations around some of the initiatives going on, Talent Together and other types of initiatives, and we're realizing we need to have a collective voice with our MDE colleagues and friends around next steps towards attending to the need for more teachers while not undermining the quality or the professionalism of the field. So stay tuned. You know, we just scheduled February 8th. We'll know more.
So more meetings and a pleasure. The next group is Michigan Public Deans. Since we last met, we've had several ad hoc quick meetings to talk about the Grow Your Own projects and our work and around Talent Together is how we're addressing those pushes. Our next formal meeting is March 1st. And then our next meeting is April 19th. At our March 1st meeting, we'll also be finalizing plans on getting together with a joint meeting with MyPie. And so that will be either the April meeting or a separate meeting that we'll call at that time. The executive team is still working on those plans. We are also looking at potentially a summer retreat because in the past, this group has always had a fall retreat. We didn't do it during the middle of the pandemic, but September was always a rough time for all of us to get together. And so we're looking for some different options on that. And then Lori, if you want to represent MyPie.
Hey, my name is Lori Burgess, and I'm the division chair at Cornerstone University and the chair of the Michigan Independent Educator Preparation Institutions. That's what MyPie stands for. So we are going to be meeting in Lansing on February 15th. And recently we've had conversations with MICU and MANS. MANS is the Michigan Association of Non-Public Schools, talking about the Michigan Future Educator Stipend that doesn't allow student teachers to be paid if they're in non-public schools. So there's been conversation around that. The meeting in Lansing, just if you are part of MyPie, an independent, and if you have not if you have not indicated whether you're going to be there in person, if you can please let me know by February 7. I just want to make sure that I'm working with MICU on some of the details. So I guess that would be an update for us. Thank you.
Great. So at 9:45, we're going to have a preview of some of the guests and the topics for MDE. We were pretty sure that these updates wouldn't take the full time, but this does give you just a few minutes to go ahead and grab another cup of coffee and like that. And we will be back in about 10 minutes.
Marcia, can I quick ask, when will the Dartep listserv be updated? Because I have a person who we've registered is not getting any of the Dartep announcements.
So Lisa, just send a name to me, or there's information on the Dartep webpage, the contacts webpage, for what the person can do to subscribe directly.
Okay.
So what happens, and just for the benefit of all, when a school sends a membership list in to Beth and pays for those memberships, that doesn't necessarily mean that Beth knows that those people aren't already on the list. So just reach out to me and I can add people to the list.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
That's another nice reminder too. We send in our list, but it's not a private list. And so if you've got individuals that you have not paid dues for like that, you can encourage other program coordinators and like that to get on the list to see all the updates.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, Marcia, that our listserv is far greater than the number of paid members we have. And so that's just something to keep in mind. We probably have several people that aren't even in the field anymore. So.
Well, those that don't need to go and refill coffee, we can just chat for a few minutes until we get to the 10:45 or 9:45 spot and just catch up.
Okay, I'm not a sap anymore. I'm all good to go. Sorry about that. I'm back. It's me.
I would have been emotional too.
Yeah, I appreciate your transparency. really felt for you. And I appreciated what you said about like the validation that you didn't know that you needed. Like that,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
It was crazy. I had no idea at 63 that I was questioning whether you don't want to be that old teacher that's there too long, right?
Yeah.
Especially K-12s, but in higher ed too.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm working with a lot of freshmen, and the freshmen were the ones that put on a going away party.
Ah,
They professionally petitioned to the dean and to the provost, and yeah, so it was very cool.
Yeah.
It was a great time of being refueled and refilled. So
yeah. Welcome back.
thanks, Lori. I just wanted you to all know I'm good. Jeez.
We sort of knew that, but it just shows the emotion.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, you pour your heart into stuff and you know what
Yeah.
happens. So,
Well, in our job, it's not just cognitive, you, like you
Ah.
said, you put your whole self and
yeah.
And it is the relationships and the identity that are all tied into it.
yeah.
Yep. Well, I teach my mantra is connections before content, not over content, but before content.
Yeah.
And so that's what he called me that night and said, the dean for students called me that night and said, your kids were great. And he said, I kept hearing over and over again about the connections. And I thought, good. And,
Yeah.
they're getting it. So,
Yeah.
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 So, and we really do. Who cares about the content when you need the connections first? So,
Yeah.
thanks, Lori.
Lots of exciting things happening. So
Actually, I do have a question for everybody if we're just hanging out. If anybody wants to email me, we're in this whole restructure piece. I've contacted Sarah Kate and Beth and Joe and Ann Tap and just try to get their feet wet, or get my feet wet on what is the structure that you all use for your different levels of leadership. For instance, in degrees, it's instructor, assistant, associate, full. So in your leadership positions, how do your schools run it? I haven't found anything that is the standard. Do you run it? I'm just gonna throw it out there openly. What's the difference in program coordinator, chair, division, college, school of? How do you decide that and how do you structure that? We don't need to get into discussion about it, but if you have anything, I know that everybody sent me just a little block of this is what we do here. I would love to find if there's a standard or a staple that's used, or is it due to, I know that some of it is due to size of schools, but I'm throwing that out there to the whole group to say, if you have anything like that, we'd love to see it. And Sarah Kate said, whatever you get, I'd love to see it too. So throw it my way it's SRAE@siennaheights.edu. That would be awesome. And I'll share with everybody what I get.
Sally, I'm going to recommend that also, because there's people not represented here at the meeting, put it out on the listserv too.
Okay.
And you may get more information than you want.
I might put your email on it, Marcia. No, I'm just kidding.
Why not?
Send too.
Well, we're beyond when we're going to start back. Alam, would you like to kind of introduce the topics of our guest speakers today? Or Sean?
I can go right ahead with that. Let's see,
Okay.
watching the cameras. All right, great. We are going to have two presentations for you this morning before going to lunch. And then before MDE updates. One is our Michigan teacher, a panel of our Michigan Teacher Leadership Advisory Council Committee, which is our Regional Teachers of the Year and our Michigan Teacher of the Year. We have a selection of them who will be joining us today. for the presentation. And Jennifer Roble, our department manager overseeing recognition programs, will be facilitating that. And this will be a fun little exercise for me to, we have this nice group photo here of our crew. And as I said, we'll have a portion of them with us today. Dr. Rice will not be joining us today, and nor is he, the one of the regional teachers of the year, but he happens to be in this picture from the January board meeting where they were all recognized. We just to give you an overview of who we have on this cohort this year. Nanette Hansen is our Region 1 and Michigan Teacher of the Year from Escanaba Public Schools. Each of these individuals will give you more details about what they spoke, what they teach, where they were prepared as part of the panel. Kathy Lamberys is our Region 2 Teacher of the Year from Roscommon Middle School. Bill Borman is our Region 3 Regional Teacher of the Year from Holland. Dawn Perez is our Region 4 from Swan Valley. Karen Slino is our Region 5 Teacher of the Year from Flushing. Ashley Lohr, who will also be joining us today, is our Region 6 from Grand Ledge, just down the road from us here. I will also note she'll be presenting to the State Board of Education, each of our regional teachers of the year, as well as our Michigan Teacher of the Year, present at the State Board throughout the calendar year. And Ashley will be speaking at the February board meeting. Dustin Sayers is our Region 7 Regional Teacher of the Year from Schoolcraft Community Schools. Stacy Trosen is our Region 8 from Pinckney. Jennifer Spides is our Region 9 from West Bloomfield. And Carl Brownlee is our Region 10 from DPSCD. And again, we'll have, I believe, about 6 or 7 of those folks joining us. And we gave them the 10 o'clock spot here, so that they could schedule that into their teaching day, and be able to join in with us. So we're not going to. We can start early depending on how many are here, but we don't want to make it too stressful for our team because they're giving us the gift of their time, and they're doing the great work that we all collectively aspire to support through our efforts. After the panel, we will have representatives from EPIC, the Education Policy Innovation Collaborative. Specifically, we'll have Tara Kilbride, who is Assistant Director for Research at EPIC, which is housed at Michigan State University College of Education. They are charged with an annual shortage report by our legislature. Did one at end of 2021, and then had one here at the end of 2022. So that'll be the 2023 comprehensive report. It is available online. You can go read it and see it. But they're going to, Tara will be presenting key findings for this. I think you're going to be very excited because one of the things that we get the most requests for in terms of data that, and most requests that we're sometimes challenged to be able to satisfy is demand data, and where specific shortages are, and where are those vacancies, where are the places that need specific kinds of teachers and specific discipline areas. And this report unpacks that to give us a good sense of the nuances of teacher shortage within our state, because we know it's both urgent and nuanced. And so that you'll see some really good graphics in here. Hopefully you'll get a chance to you will get a chance to access the slide deck, because I think there's some images in this deck and some data that you're going to want to use for local presentations, for your accreditation for sure, to help talk about demand, and also in your own efforts for outreach. I hope some of the information surprises you about the reach of your respective institutions. But I also hope some of it is an affirmation of what you know about your program and its impact, because you've been measuring this for accreditation activities. All right, and so that's my intros. Let's see if I can call on Jennifer if she knows who some of our team members are online and ready to perhaps do some detailed introductions.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to be here again today. This is one of the highlights for the R-Toys. I know that, and one for me too, because I get to hear the great insights that they'll give all of us today. I see Karen Salino and Jennifer Cepetis and Stacy Trozen on the line right now. We're waiting on Dustin Sayers and Ashley Lohr. She's
I'm here, Jen.
Oh, there you are. Thanks, Dustin. I see about 500 people, so I'm trying to look really quickly here. And Nanette Hansen, the Michigan Teacher of the Year, is supposed to join us as well. And I do have some questions from the R-Toys that I will be asking all of them. But I also have some questions from the R-Toys for some of you as well. And please feel free to jump in and ask any questions of them as well. So Karen, Jennifer, Stacy, and Dustin, who wants to go first to kind of give a background of where you teach, what you teach, and where you did your undergrad at, to give the Dartep members a little better understanding of where you're from and what region?
I can go if nobody else is really wanting to go first. I'm happy to go. My name is Stacy Trozen. I'm from Region 8, so that's like Greater Ann Arbor area. And I teach at Pinckney Community High School. I'm a high school science teacher. I received my Bachelor of Science in Biology from University of Michigan, Flint. And then I received my high school teaching certification from Eastern Michigan University, and then went on to Eastern Michigan to obtain my secondary education master's in secondary ed. Is there anything else that I missed?
Oh, that's perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jen Cepetis. My undergrad was from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I'm currently working on a PhD at Oakland University. So I want to give a shout out to them, OU. And I am at West Bloomfield High School in Region 9. This is my 18th year teaching. I am currently teaching, I like to say currently because I've taught, I believe, 21 different courses. I'm teaching now AP Government and Global Studies of Genocide and Positive Psychology, which is a course I just developed this year because of all the stress and anxiety I've noticed students are having. And thank you all for being here.
Perfect. Thank you. Karen.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm in Region 5, which is the Flint, Genesee County area and the Thumb. And I am currently teaching at Flushing High School. I'm a math teacher there. I actually have an English major as well, but I teach math. And so right now I'm teaching pre-calculus and AP calculus, and then I'm also teaching consumer math. So I kind of get a really wide variety of students, but I've taught everything in the high school math curriculum. I am an alum from SVSU and honestly, amazing ed program there. So thank you to SVSU for getting me started. Go Cards. And I got a master's in math at Oakland University. So again, go Grizzlies. So thank you for listening to us all today. And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Karen. Dustin?
Hi, so I'm Dustin Sayers. I'm Region 7, so Southwest Michigan. My path to education was a little bit different because I was never really going to be a teacher. I went to Kellogg Community College, and then I had my undergrad with Albion College, Communications, Political Science, and Econ. And then I started working with Lutheran Social Services of Michigan with foster youth who were in school, trying to get through school. And I went back to Olivet College to get my endorsement. Unfortunately, my teacher prep program doesn't exist anymore because Olivet no longer offers it. And I finished my master's from Davenport University in 2017 in data science. I currently teach at Schoolcraft Community Schools. I am a 8th grade teacher teaching US history, but I've taught everything there from geography to 6th graders to econ and civics to 12th graders and juniors.
Perfect. Thank you, Dustin. And Kathy Lambert has joined us too. She's from Roscommon. Kathy, if you want to just tell us where you teach, what region, and where you went to undergrad and master's.
Okay, hi, I'm Kathy Lambrese. I teach at Roscommon Middle School. This is my 20th year. I have taught first, second, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 7th grades. I left off in 6th and 7th grade English and social studies. And this year I am the 5th through 8th grade instructional coach. My undergrad and both my master's degree come from Grand Valley University. And I think that's also go Lakers.
Perfect.
Hi,
Thank
Jennifer.
you.
I'm here.
Yep, you're saving the MTOY for last. So Nanette Hansen is the 22-23 MTOY, and go ahead, Nanette.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us today. My name is Nanette Hansen. I have been teaching for over 2 decades, from alternative high school all the way down to 1st grade, where I've been for the last 17 years. It's my very favorite. I received my undergrad and my master's from Northern Michigan University. I am the Region 1 Teacher of the Year, which is the entire UP. And I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you. And I don't see any of the other 4, so I want to make sure that I'm not missing them. If I miss any 4, just speak up and we'll have you introduce them. And when Ashley comes on, I'll let her introduce herself as well. So the first question is to the RTOYs. What did the ed prep programs that you went to as undergrad, how did they prepare you best to go into your internship or student teaching, if you're from my era? How did they prepare you the best to go into a classroom of your own? What tools did they give you? Anybody can jump in.
I can go first.
Go ahead, Nanette. Well, as I said a few minutes ago, SVSU has an amazing ed program, and it's been several years since I was there. This is my 31st year in education, but what I loved about SVSU's program was that I had experience in classrooms long before I ever student taught. So their placement program, and I don't know how it is now, but at that time made sure that we were in our major, we were in our minor, that we were in a junior high or middle school, that we were in a high school, that we were in a suburban setting, a rural setting, and an inner city setting. And we had required lessons at each of those levels. So by the time I got to student teaching, I had a pretty good idea of where my comfort level was, and also what things I was not as comfortable with. And so when I went to a job interview, I had a lot to talk about besides just my student teaching, because I had all of those different lessons and experiences at so many different places. So thank you to SVSU for that.
So I want to pause because Dawn Perez and Ashley Lord just joined us. So Dawn and Ashley, could you please introduce yourself, what you teach, where you teach, the region, and where you went to undergrad or graduate school?
Hello all, I am Dawn Perez. I teach at Swan Valley High School. I've been there this is my 32nd year. And I went to Central Michigan University for my undergrad, and I have my master's degree through Central Michigan. I am a CTE teacher in voc ed for finance and BMA, which is business management. I also do coding and teach coding programming. I do audio video, anything business IT related I can teach.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Lohr. I just finished up with some third graders. I teach beginnergarten through fourth grade music in Grand Ledge Public Schools on the west side of Lansing. And I'm also an adjunct professor at Anderson University down in Indiana. And I went to Central Michigan for my undergrad and the University of Michigan for my master's degree. I did their summer master's program.
Perfect, thank you. And Ashley and Dawn, I'm not sure if you heard the question, but the question was, how did the EPP prepare you as a student teacher and intern going into your classroom for the first time? And Karen answered that first. And so if anybody else would like to answer that question as well.
I'll go. So as I said, I went to Olivet for the teacher prep program after, I already had my 2 degrees under the belt. But Olivet had something called Camp to the Classroom. And along with our student teaching, we had to go to Sherman Lake YMCA. And we were out there for maybe about 5 weeks, I believe, but we had a different group of kids pretty much every 3 days. And we got to pretty much try everything that we had learned in the classroom and learned, student teaching on these kids. So we were able to practice, social emotional learning. We were able to get to know students, do team building activities, and then transfer those to our actual, careers. And I think that was probably one of the most rewarding things. And I think it's one of the reasons that I still go to 7th grade camp every year, even though I don't teach 7th grade anymore.
Perfect, thank you, Dustin. Who else?
Can go. So I've got a couple of different experiences. I wasn't a real traditional teacher candidate or gone through the process in a traditional fashion. I received my undergrad from U of M Flint first, and then decided I wanted to get my teaching certificate at Eastern. As a high school science teacher, I think the preparation I had in my content area was really helpful. To be fluent in your own content is very important. And so at U of M Flint, I received a fantastic education for content. And then at Eastern, I had a biology methods course, teaching biology at the high school level methods course. And that was just a phenomenal experience. We were treated kind of like high school students, and we went through lessons. The professor who designed those lessons was phenomenal. And to this day, 20 some years later, I still think about that course and the things that I learned and how I can incorporate my learning and my immersion in that learning into my classroom today. It was just a really phenomenal experience.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy.
I'm going to say mine. I agree with the content part. I went to CMU and I learned valuable skills in the business area in the Grand Hall. It's what I remember. And I like the methods courses and working with the teachers there and the student teachers, and we learned together and were able to get lessons and stuff before I even went to student teaching. I did go student teach at a career center, which really ties into what I do here at this high school. Pretty much we have a vocational program at a high school through lots of hard work getting it going. But I loved the student teaching and learning what I was supposed to do at that VOC Bay Area Next Skills Center.
Thank you, Dawn.
Hi, it's Jen Sapettes. I can go. My was also an untraditional way. I went to Ann Arbor at U of M, but teaching was not on my radar. So I did not go to the education program there. I was a psych major, and then I moved to Chicago and was at DePaul University. while I was working in advertising, went back to school there and received a teaching certificate and my master's. I would say there, I can speak from teaching there. I was in the city of Chicago doing work and also in the suburbs. So I had an opportunity to do both. But I did want to say now, being back in school at Oakland University, I am getting an ed specialist. I'll graduate in the spring, and also a PhD, which I'm working on as well. Has been an incredible experience to be back in the classroom now, to be back in school as a student, because I am able to relate so much of what I'm learning at OU with what is happening in my district at a level that is that just makes a lot of sense now, having so much experience in the classroom. So it's extremely valuable. So I would say even a push out to teachers who've been in the classroom, it really helped me create the class I'm doing right now, which is in positive psych, and gave me the extra boost to do more for my kids and my students and the community. So it's given me this more motivation as a teacher. It's been an incredible experience.
I can say I loved going to Central. I actually double majored in vocal music education and English education. So I'm certified to teach K-12 music because that's a certification, and then secondary English. And so Central has mid-tier observations where you were required to go to the same classes every week for, I think it was 10 or 12 weeks, and teach a few classes through those. So I had to mid-tier in both a music classroom and an English classroom. And I was able to double count a few things here and there, but I still was able to obtain these degrees using kind of dipping my toes in both areas. That way I was more prepared for it. And something else that I really appreciated, and I don't know that it's always this way or would be this way, but there was a lot of flexibility with when I could jump into classrooms. And I did have a few things that were scheduled on Fridays, for example, but going to my professors at Central, they were able to work around some of the credits in the classes that I needed to take so that I could actually on my own go out. And I spent most Fridays for at least 4 years in a local high school and middle school working with their choirs and stuff like that. So like I would not have been able to do that had Central and my professors not had some flexibility in scheduling to help me continue doing that and getting that additional experience.
Perfect. Thank you, Ashley and Jen. Nanette, do you have anything to add?
I sort of want to mirror what Karen said earlier. I was able to do a split position where I was in a first grade and then I was in the upper L. I had the I was in 2 different schools, and I was able to have access to 2 different schools of thought. I had a very young teacher as my supervising teacher, and I had a very veteran teacher, and it sort of opened my eyes to the way people kind of progress through their career. And so it was valuable to me. Again, I was able to get into the classrooms to do a lot of practicum work and see different grade levels all through going before I went to do my student teaching, which I thought was very valuable, which I think is super important. Right now I have 2 girls from Lake State that come in my room 3 days a week, and they don't even need the hours. They literally don't need the hours, but they're getting the hours because they're so into what they're doing. And I think it's so important to, fire young teachers up and let them see, passionate teachers in the classroom so that they can kind of see what it's all about.
Thank you. Kathy, did you go yet, or did I miss that? I'm paying attention, I promise.
I have not, but yeah, I thought I really liked it at Grand Valley that we had 1 semester of teacher assisting where we went into the school for 3 days a week and worked in 1 grade level. And that was the semester before our student teaching. And so it really immersed us in a classroom prior to that total investment of student teaching. And it was just really helpful because, I think you learn so much from that experience of just being in the classroom, more so than just the coursework itself. It just is, and you learn from so many different teachers, like Nanette mentioned. I learned from, the teacher that I was with for that teacher assisting, and then I went on to learn in a different grade level from student teaching, and all the while taking the coursework at Grand Valley and the support from the other students that were in their practicums as well. And it was just a really good experience. And I'm glad I got all that hands-on, that, job experience before I was actually put in my own classroom.
Perfect, thank you. And Carl Brownlee, Region 10 Teacher of the Year, just joined us, and I think he's in the process of shooing students out so he can speak with us. But I want to take an opportunity to kind of switch that question now to the Artois. What do you, as you take on student teachers or teacher interns, what do you see that they need more of from ed prep programs, or what do you think that you needed more of? And there's different generational gaps there, so it's kind of, and I don't know whether if that transfers over from my era to like Ashley's era, two different generations there. So what do you think they need coming into the classroom now, and what did you need coming into the classroom?
Can I speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
In my travels around the great state, upper and lower Michigan, I have resoundingly heard that we need two or three things. The biggest thing that I've heard is that gen ed teachers need more exposure to special ed, everything. So special ed, IEPs, understanding accommodations and modifications, understanding 504s, understanding their part, how they fit together, that, special ed is just a program. It is not a place where your children go. It's, so I think that new teachers need more exposure in the pre-service area, even if it was something like, where they were in a special ed classroom for 2 weeks and they got a pass fail, for finding out, sitting in an IEP, understanding what a 504 is. All of those things are really like lacking. And I can see that, like Jennifer was saying about generationally, some veteran teachers that have worked, well over 30, 40 years, sometimes they think that a behavior child needs to just be sent to special ed. They don't understand that it's a program and that it's, legally bound by the law. That is the thing that has come up almost across the board in every place that I've, talked to special ed teachers. And I think that it would be really important to sort of work that in to a requirement of gen ed teachers, so that they work seamlessly to lift their students up together.
Perfect, thank you. Who else would like to answer that loaded question?
I'd like to piggyback on what Nanette said about having more experience in special ed. We're kind of going through in our district a revamping of how special ed and general ed teachers are working together, at least at the high school. And I'm finding that a lot of even our veteran teachers struggle with helping accommodate student work. And that connection between special ed and general ed, there's a big disconnect. So I certainly agree with everything that Nanette said. I've had a few student teachers, and I had one that was phenomenal, and I had another one who struggled a bit. And a big part of it was the content. She just didn't have the content background to be able to support students and to then really work on that classroom piece. I think having that content background is really important, so that when you're in the classroom in front of students, you're able to really work on that stuff that you don't necessarily get in your education classes at college or university. And that's really what that time is for, is to hone those interpersonal skills with students and other teacher leaders in that building. Beyond that, I can't think of much else. I think it would have been nice. I did a semester of student teaching. I really like, I forget who had mentioned a few minutes back, but having that almost like an apprenticeship period before student teaching, getting in the classroom a bit more. So that first year when you're, put in your own room by yourself, you feel like you've got those classroom management skills as a foundation versus learning on the fly.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy.
I'm gonna second both Stacy and Annette. I didn't know what a 504 was until I started teaching, because I didn't hear it in teacher prep. And to me, that's a big concern. Someone might come out and not know what a 504 plan is. It's a legally binding document there. But mine might sound a little odd, but it's the biggest thing in my opinion is that I'm secondary. High school teachers and middle school teachers need to actually sit down with some elementary teachers. Nobody does rotational teaching better than elementary students, elementary teachers, and they still get that joy with the kids of getting them up and getting experimental exercises and moving them around and knowing where each individual group is. And I still look at some of my colleagues and they don't know how to differentiate, but you look at those elementary teachers and you have group A, group B, group C, and over the years, I've kind of taught my middle school as a little bit of elementary, a little bit of secondary, but I think that if you're a secondary teacher, you should sit through an elementary class. And if you're an elementary teacher, you should probably sit through a secondary class just so you get that experience, or even go visit, an elementary. But that's something that I never got to see because I was gonna, be the upper level and be with the high school students. But there's so much that I have learned from my elementary colleagues.
Thank you, Dustin.
I'll jump in here. As luck would have it, just yesterday I was talking with a colleague who has a student teacher in our building. And I said, oh, great. Well, how is it going? And she said, well, we have some challenges. So I said, well, tell me, because I want to share these things, right? So she shared her meeting notes that she had with her student teacher. And to summarize, really, there just wasn't an awareness of all of the things that we as educators do every day, all at the same time, that is now second nature to us because we do it every day. But this student teacher wasn't thinking about things like, you need to have a routine when class begins so that we know this is what we do when class starts. And also this is what we do when class is ending. Or things like, what do you do during that class time? How are you interacting with the students? Are you calling them by name? Things like that. And just the whole organization of building a lesson, delivering it, and following up on it. And it is a very overwhelming job that we do, but we do it because we love it. So I think the passion is there in this young teacher, but just really having a sense of how do you build a lesson? What does from bell to bell look like? And how do you juggle all of those things that you're doing all at the same time?
Perfect. Thank you, Karen.
Hi.
One thing I would say is the time investment that I have not noticed with our student teacher here, but in a neighboring school district, they're really noticing that some of the new teachers they have gotten do not understand the time required to be a teacher. They've kind of come into this thinking you come in at 8 and you leave at 3, and they're having a really hard time telling them that no, this you do have to put in time to get the, it's not just magic. It doesn't just happen. And, and I know that when I student taught, I had a great teacher that I worked with, and we stayed after and we worked together. I don't know if some student or some other teachers don't do that, the host teacher, but it's been a real eye opener for some of these newer teachers coming in that just didn't realize that it was not that type of job, and their families don't understand why would you have to put in all this time, and so I think just letting new teacher candidates understand that this is not just, it's not that job that people outside of our career look at us, oh, you work till 3 and then you get summers off. That's not it, and you don't get summers off if you're doing professional development. And I always say I get July. I always try to take July, and that's about it. And, in that you are working after schools and you have meetings. I don't think people understand the different meetings and committees and things that you have to be involved in. So I think that would be a really important thing that new candidates understand.
Jennifer? Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, I just wanted to reiterate what's already been said, the importance of special education, the 504s and the IEPs. Classroom management is usually challenging for new teachers. Also, I think being flexible with being understanding of the students who are in front of you, because teachers may not get a job in the district that the student taught in. They may have thought they were going in for maybe high school, and the job that they receive is in middle school, and it may be in a completely different area. So really getting to know the community and understanding the needs of those students and building a connection. And I would say that can be challenging for a new teacher when they're trying to put together lesson plans. They're trying to understand the content themselves, but also at the same time, getting to know the students in a way that is appropriate, especially if you're a younger teacher and you're teaching high school kiddos who may be just a handful of years older than you. So we're needing to understand where that line is between understanding that they're a teacher and you're not their friend, but you're there to build a relationship and maintain good communication. So that line can be a challenge for some of the teachers who are coming in younger.
Ashley, Dawn, or Carl?
I would say two things that scaffolding and anticipation. And whenever I'm working with someone new or someone new to elementary, I've been mentoring someone who was at the high school level for 10 years and switched down to elementary because our certs allow us to do that, K-12. And I told her, you know the content, you know exactly where these kids need to go. You just spent 10 years knowing exactly what you wanted out of these kids. The thing is that you need to work on how you're going to scaffold your lessons and how you're going to anticipate what the needs will be within that class time. It's one thing to know that content and to build a nice looking lesson plan. First, the teacher will do this, then the student will do this. Yeah, that's easy to do on paper, but if I'm doing a lesson on the surprise symphony and I have students with sensory needs, I'm going to also know that I need to warn them that there are going to be loud sounds. Do you need some headphones for this? So it's all of these little things that are really, it's learning the art form, and it's not especially easy to do when you are at a distance studying, but as you do get into those classrooms and you spend time amongst those students at different levels and in different areas, you are going to be able to pick up on that, and then that will come into your planning, your scaffolding, and anticipating their needs.
Perfect, thank you. Dawn?
Yes, coming in after Nanette and Kathy and everybody else, I agree totally with Nanette about the 504 and the special needs, because I didn't know anything until I was here. I've attended many IEPs, a year, a dozen at least, we go through. So, and you don't learn until you get here about them as into your career. And then the thing with Kathy too, that just stood out about the teachers that think they're just going to work from 7:30 to 2:30 here. You're not going to, you have all the grading to do, the lesson planning to do that you're not doing in that 1 hour prep that you get per day. So the kids or the teachers have to know that. I've had 2 student teachers in my career, and they were from CMU, and they both came in with lots of knowledge. We learned from each other. I loved working with them. They both had our success in a job. One's an administrator, one's working at a college. I stay in touch with them. I just think that they need to know more about like classroom management when you come in. As a personal experience, when I came in, I heard someone, I can't remember who said it. I was young. I was 22 and I had 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds in my class. You can't have them calling you Dawn. They need to call you Mrs. Perez so that they know, and then you need to get to know them. And I agree with that. As in, there's a boundary, and you have to have. And I know I'm gonna say this again off someone else. Procedures in the beginning and the end. Principals and administrators don't like seeing kids line up the doors. They want you to have those procedures entailed, and the student teachers didn't know that. I know and I didn't when I first came in. So everything I've learned here at Swan Valley, I definitely was able to give that hopefully to my student teachers.
Perfect. Thank you, Dawn. Carl Brownlee, would you like to introduce yourself? And then if you'd like to answer the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, how's everyone doing? My name is Carl Brownlee. I'm the regional teacher of the year for District 10. I've been teaching going on 25 years with DPS CD. I teach social studies, 7th and 8th grade social studies. I'm a 8-year veteran Gulf War vet. How about that? Did 8 years in the Marine Corps, and when I came out, I did some service work in the community with the Detroit Urban League, and also just other neighborhood agencies that I worked with before I went into teaching. Hearing, if I'm not mistaken, I kind of couldn't listen to too much because I had a class. But if I'm hearing about classroom management, having your procedures definitely is a big thing that you have to have. When you come off a break, you need to let your students know what your expectations are. And if you have to go over your expectations every day as a new teacher, you have to do that. And once they understand what you expect from them, I believe they'll start to buy in to what you're telling them. It's a culture change. The analogy I would try and kind of use is, if you look at some of the sports teams that have a bad season, they get rid of the coach, they get a new coach, and then the same team, they perform and do exceedingly well. What happened? It was a culture change. And as a new teacher going into that classroom, you're going to have your challenges, but if you can stand fast and just use the people around you, invest that time, because it definitely is not a 7 to 3 job. But that time that you invest is going to pay off down the road. I had a student teacher, and my thing was for him, at first he started to try and emulate and do what I was doing with the class. And I told him, look, what are your skills? What do you bring to the table? He rapped. And when he started to use his talents and his skills in the classroom, then the students started to buy into what he was trying to share with them as far as with the lessons. So if you're a student teacher, you also have to bring who you are, your skill set and what you've done in life. It might not be as much as us older teachers, but there are some things that you can share about yourself in that classroom with these young people, and you may make connections that way also. And always try and find an ally in the classroom. There are young people who will be your allies. Once you get them to buy in, they can get that class to buy in. So those are just some things that just from my experience being in the classroom, and just don't give up. That if anything else, don't give up. There's a way to take care of it. You got more tools than just a hammer. Okay, so that would be my advice to a young teacher coming to the classroom. Use as many tools as you can so you can be successful.
So let's kind of piggyback off of that, Carl. That was a perfect transformation there for me to this next question. What recommendations would you all, as regional teachers of the year, have about prepping candidates to work with students with backgrounds unfamiliar to the new candidates coming into the classroom?
If I was I just think that you have to be relevant, and being relevant, you know, there's a saying of, you know, keep your enemies close to you. They're not enemies, but I need to know my students. I may not, I have to go, if I got to go on TikTok, look at the latest dances or the language, I don't have to come in the classroom doing that, but I need to understand what they're talking about. I need to understand and be able to communicate if necessary. So I need to know about Snapchat. I need to know about Facebook, Instagram, because that's their culture. That's where they're at. And if I can go in there and I can, you know, it's a way of making stuff that they look at relevant in the classroom. If I'm talking about social studies and I see what they're what their life is about or what their culture is about, I have to bring that and incorporate that into my lesson somehow. But we're just dealing with different wired young people. They are not that type that'll come in the classroom and just sit and listen to you talk. You have to bring things that that's going to catch their interest.
Perfect, thank you. Who else would like to answer that one?
I'll piggyback off of Carl there. So Nanette knows this. I'm a big fan of capturing kids' hearts, so CKH. And one of the things that I like to do in the classroom is good things. So the first 3 to 5 minutes every single day is good things. And then on Friday, we do whole class good things, weekend plans. If you don't know about your kids, you can't really connect to them. So if you're starting to ask them every single day, well, what's going on in your world? Or, you know, how's your family doing? It helps build that connection, especially now with social emotional learning. I mean, that's a huge piece, but I wouldn't want to set foot in a classroom if I didn't know about my students. So at the very beginning of the year, team building activities. I don't teach for the first 2 weeks. I've resisted that. And, you know, when I first was a new teacher and I came in, I thought I had to teach my content right away. And now it's team building activities, get to know each other. They need to get to know, you know, us as well. I think new teachers who are coming in should have a presentation about their background ready to go so that students get to know about them. And then in turn, you get to know about your students. But I have a saying that I've taught to fellow teachers or students who have come in and now are starting to teach, get to know the kids' names, because you can't teach them if you don't know their names. And you just doing those simple team building activities on a daily basis, I think goes a long way.
Perfect, thank you, Dustin.
Yes, to add on to that, I agree 100%. We actually tell teachers to take the first 2 weeks and build relationships. And the same thing, it's just get to know them, you know, ask questions. We actually do activities that, you know, introduce ourselves and have them, you know, introduce themselves. I always did a slide presentation where they would each get a slide that represented themselves, you know, add pictures, tell us about yourself. I have a colleague that does decorate your locker slide. So it's a virtual locker and they can add, you know, you put in videos, pictures, just anything that gets us all to know one another. We're in a really small school here in Roscommon. Our district is small, so most kids know one another. And, you know, we get new students in, but most of them have been together for a long time. But it's just really important to build that cohesive classroom and, you know, generate that safe space, that safe environment, so that everybody feels comfortable sharing. And I think once you build those relationships, you get that even if you don't have similar backgrounds, because you know, even we're not ethnically diverse up here in Roscommon, but there's a lot of socioeconomic diversity here. And, you know, even with that, you still find those relationships are built just by taking that time, those couple of weeks to get to know one another and create those safe environments so students know that you care and that you are there for them.
And Sally, thank you, Kathy. Sally Ray just put in the chat. What about trauma-informed practices? Have you all found that is missing?
Big time. I definitely did not know anything about trauma anything from undergrad. And then it took me a graduate course on adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, to learn about what they were and how they were affecting my students. And I mean, I took the ACEs test to learn my ACE score, and I've done all that stuff. And it changed the way that I understand my students, and it changed the way that I speak with them in different circumstances. And it's huge. Ruby Payne's poverty book, it's like 120 pages. And then there's 120 pages of references throughout. It's a beautiful book, Dr. Payne, Payne. But yeah, I definitely feel, especially since everything going on with COVID, like our environments have changed. The way that I teach elementary music is so different. We spend so much more time going through the practice of how do we work with each other? How do we communicate? How do you pick a partner? What do you say to a partner? How do you talk with a partner? You know, if you don't want to be partners with someone, you can say, no, thank you. But you can't just say, no, get away from me. So we have to go through all of this stuff. And a lot of that is coming from these traumatic experiences, or these experiences that they haven't had yet because of the environment that we've been in, especially the past 3 years or so. So anyway, yes, I agree. Trauma is huge right now. And it has changed the way that I teach, knowing more about it.
So let's wrap all three of those, because Ashley, you touched on COVID. Let's wrap COVID, trauma informed, and race and ethnicity into the next few answers, if anybody else wants to tackle that.
One thing, oh, go ahead.
So through the work I've done at Oakland University, my focus has been on student mental health, and I started doing my research as soon as I started the program. So every paper I've done, I've researched student mental health, and that led me to send out questionnaires every other week to every single one of my students, to check in with them to see how they're doing physically, how are they feeling emotionally, is there anything that they'd like to share with me? And if they do choose to share anything, it can be a positive story, it can be something that's going on at home, really anything. I will write back to them, and that's created a huge, just a great flow of communication, because I have 36 students in every class. So it's a huge number, and I don't always have time, which some of the teachers may find if they're teaching high school. So high school is different. It's hard for kids sometimes to open up in the classroom because you have conversations going on. There's other students that can hear. They may not feel comfortable opening up to a teacher face to face, but they do feel comfortable emailing and sharing what's going on, and being able to say, hey, so-and-so's in the hospital, can I get an extra day on this assignment? Yes, of course, let me know how you're doing. So I have found that we do need, as teachers, to really check in with our students, because they don't always feel comfortable coming to us. And the students they're going through a lot. They do have a lot of stressors. They do have a lot of anxiety. And over the course of the years, probably other teachers can also comment on this too. There has been this year a lot more students who are needing to go into hospitalization for trauma. I've lost a couple students who've taken their lives. So it is something that we do need to take really seriously. And years ago, when I was a student, it was a long time ago, this was not something that was covered. It just wasn't, I don't think, as much of an issue maybe back then, but now it's something really every day. The kids are going through a lot, and they need our support.
Thank you, Jennifer. Nanette, Karen, or Dawn?
I just want to add to just what everyone has been saying, that pre-service teachers really just need to know that their classroom is going to be filled with tons of different people that are different from them. And your classroom is your classroom. And you have to start there, and you have to build those relationships out. And if you don't know something, you have to ask someone smarter than you to help you. And it's okay to ask people for help. If you don't know, about a certain ethnic background, honestly, it falls on you to find out about that so that you can best help your student. And I think, I'm a million years into teaching, but new teachers have all of this umbrella, plus learning more about the students. And, that's what is so almost terrifying to new teachers, because they're like, how am I going to do all of this? And just reach out to somebody smarter than you. And there's always someone smarter than you. I mean, the group that I work with this year of our toys, they are smarter than me. I love them. They have taught me so much. Thank you. And I'm not afraid to ask them, hey, what do you know about this? Or what else could I do here? And I've learned a lot. And it's remind new pre-service teachers, it's okay to ask, but it's up to you. You have you have this classroom, and it's your job to nurture and grow them in the best of your ability.
Thank you. Dawn or Kieran?
I want to just say community, as in that's another thing too, is to be involved with your extracurriculars after school. There's not enough of that, as in go to the kids' sporting events that are in your class. Go to plays and drama, and just be involved here at wherever they're working. And that helps with the kid too, to know that you care and that you're going. I do a lot after school tutoring I'm involved into, and like the Business Professionals of America is one of my groups where my kids will come to me, the kids that are in our group, and just to talk, because I've had suicide training, and we've had a couple too here in our buildings in the last 3-4 years. And it's not pleasant when that disrupts your community. So I just say, get involved to that's community involvement.
Thank you, Dawn. Kieran, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I would add, a lot of the art toys have talked about that beginning of the year relationship building, which is so important. But once the content starts, that can't end. So there have to be things that you're doing daily, weekly, to get to know them. This year I started, when we have a quiz or a test, they have their name in the upper right corner. It no longer says name with a blank, it says math rock star, and then they put their name next to it. And then below it, there's a question to answer, like my favorite TV show, my favorite song, my favorite whatever. Because it's just starting, even though you're in assessment mode and you're kind of stressed, I want to know about you. And you can learn a lot through a few of these, just getting a sense of who these kids are. That hello when they walk in the door every day makes a difference. And they'll sometimes tell you that later, but not always. But having someone say, hey, good morning, and calling them by name makes them feel that they belong there and they have a place. And that's really what it's about. And all the other things will happen because they'll feel comfortable enough talking to you and telling you who they are.
I totally second that. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, so Friday fun questions. Well, if you could have any superpower, what would be, what do you want for dinner? What's your favorite ice cream? What's the dessert that you want? And then just go up and down the rows. It takes all of 3 minutes to get through, 30 kids, just rapid fire, but everybody gets to share and everybody gets a voice.
Marcia, I have 2 more questions. Is that okay? Okay. The next question is, and then we have a fun question to end for the our toys. What is your most valued collaboration with an ed prep program? How have you worked with an ed prep program to help someone, or help your classroom, or help your content area, or help a student candidate, or get tickets to a football game? What's the best thing that they have helped you with?
I can't touch.
You know, I don't know if I have a best with just an ed prep program, but I've had several former students come in. So we have early middle college in our district. So instead of having AP courses, you can be, you know, a sophomore and start to take high school classes. And we have students who want to go into ed. And so they're taking like their sort of like practicum classes. I've invited them back in, and just having those high school students that are seniors working with 7th and 8th graders, that's beneficial, I think, to me, to have those kids back, because you have kids who are, you know, maybe 3-4 years older than them, and they really kind of listen and look up to those, you know, their older counterparts, especially with our football players. I'm in a small rural district. Football is life. And so last year I had a student who's big linebacker, great kid. He's probably going to go D1, maybe D2, we'll see. But having him in the classroom to help some of those other students who were, you know, maybe a little bit more challenging, they might not listen to me as much as they would listen to Ian, who I had in the room. So it was just nice to be able to have those kids back and hear their perspectives as well.
Great, thank you, Dustin.
Jen, I don't know if this really addresses your question or not, but I would love to be a part of teacher prep in universities around us. And I think this year, as being an Artoy, has really helped me to see that we all have a voice, and having people ask us, well, what's your experience and what do you think, has been amazing. And this experience today is exactly what I'm talking about. So I would love to be invited anywhere that someone would want me to come and talk to teacher candidates. And we've already done some of that already, but I think all of us are probably open to that and sharing what we know. And we're not experts at all. We're still learning every day and changing what we do. But the only thing we have on our side is a lot of time, and for some of us more time than others of us. But we're open to that. So.
Perfect. And CMU has done an outstanding job. I'll give a shout out to Mindy Keck with the Teacher Candidate Conference. The Artoys do an amazing job every year, and we keep getting asked back. So we will go anywhere. We'll travel. So
Karen, we are
yeah.
experts. Karen, we are experts. You're being too modest. We're experts. To do what we do, you gotta be an expert.
So the last question is, what happened on your best day in your teaching career, and what happened on your worst day?
Can I go real quick? And
yes.
I gotta pick my kids up from lunch. Unfortunately, my worst day I'll do first. December 15th, 2015. December 1st, 2015. We lost a student, unfortunately, to gun violence. The next day, I thought that because she was a very popular young lady, I thought that these young people were not going to show up, probably stay at home. They had all of the 8th graders go into the cafeteria. Came around, you know, as teachers, I was upset. Staff administration was upset. I didn't think the children would show up. Went in there. We had roughly a 98% attendance. And the resilience from these young people impressed me to the point that I had to get myself together to stand in front of them, because I mean, it was just a tragic thing that happened. You know, of course, when a young person that age 14 loses their life, but seeing that's my best and my worst day, because we lost her, but I saw the resilience in these young people and how they just galvanized together, and they lifted each other up, and they carried on until when they were promoted. I still see a lot of them today, and it just reminds me of that day when we lost Aaliyah, and then the following day when they all showed up, and that just kind of boggled my mind, that some of these young people are kind of like, you know, people in war, that they just keep moving. You know, you have one fall to the side, and they just, they just stick together and they just move as a group. And I just thought that was, that's just one of the most amazing things to me that I'll always remember in my teaching career, of how they just came together in spite of this tragedy. First student I ever lost, and I've lost students, but after they've either grown up or various things in high school. But this was one that I actually had in the classroom, and that was probably obviously my worst day. But the next day when we dealt with the young people, that was my best day.
Thank you, Carl.
All right.
Thanks for showing up, to appreciate it.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day, ladies and gentlemen. I have to pick my kids up from lunch. I'm glad I could join you all.
Thank you for coming.
Anybody else want to give their best or just best? You don't have to give a worst.
Well, I can give a worst. It was March 13th, 2020, because that was the day that all the teachers were at school and there were no kids there. And that is a terrible feeling. It was terrible. And we didn't know what was coming. So kids did come in and they said, well, what are we going to do? Are you still going to teach us? And I'd say, I don't know. I don't know. And I've never felt so helpless as a teacher, because I wanted to reassure them, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And that was definitely the worst day, because of the unknown, and that I couldn't be a support for them. And I knew they needed it, but I also didn't know what to say. So that was definitely the worst. But I can't pick a best, because there are so many of those little moments that make your day a best. And it might be some kid comes in and says, hey, I just invented a new number I have to show you. Or, hey, I just found this, or I just found that. Or just a day when you just have a breakthrough with somebody. Those are all the best day. I don't think I could pick one that stands out. And that's why I feel so lucky to be in this profession for as long as I have, because it's amazing. And people outside of us don't know what that's like, but we are just so fortunate.
Thank you, Karen. I think we all
So-
felt that way on March 13th.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my best day didn't happen actually in the classroom. It happened several years later. It was my first year of teaching, and I, of course, stumbled through it like everybody does their first year. And I had a student who, she was a rough student, and I'm not even sure if she actually graduated on time. But I received a phone call one evening on my landline. So this was a little while ago. And it was that particular student. She was grown, she was married, she had kids, and she just wanted to reach out and thank me for believing in her and for helping her, to get where she is today, and to apologize for all of the grief she had given me as well. So to me, that was, I could have retired after that moment. I felt like, if our jobs mean anything, that's what we want to hear. And we don't know where a lot of our kids end up. And there's a lot of kids out there who probably don't reach out, but that was really special to me. And I'm not going to talk about my worst day.
Thank you, Stacy. Dawn?
I'm going to go on something like what Stacy said. I like it when my alumni come back, and I have one that just, I went to a fall leadership or a regional leadership thing just this past December, on December 20th. And I had about 9 of the students come back that have been with me they've been out of school for about 5-6 years. And they came to help at our BPA regionals, and just seeing what they're turning into. And that right there, I was like, Stacy, I could retire right now and be happy. So just seeing that. So I'm not going to say worst. If my worst, I still remember 3rd hour 911. Worst day for me.
Yep.
I have lots, like Karen said, it's so hard to pick because there's so many, and especially over 20 years, I have a lot. But recently, in my new role, I get to go up to the high school. My 8th grade, the 8th grade is at the high school. So in my coaching, I have an 8th grade teacher that I coach. And so going up to the high school, it's just, I love it. My former 7th graders that are seniors and juniors and sophomores and fresh, all of them, they'll just come running up and they're like, Mrs. Lane, and they just give me big hugs. And it's so nice to see the ones, just all happy to see me. That I'm sure in 7th grade, when I was making them write essays, they were not so happy to see me. And so it's great to get the big hugs and see my former students. And I love that.
Thank you, Kathy. Ashley,
I'll go.
ahead.
Oh,
Oh, Dustin, yep, go ahead.
yep.
Perfect.
Well, I'll try and do it without crying or like tearing up. I don't want to do the worst day, but so for me, it's just always nice to hear kids say, "Oh, do we have to leave your class?" Or, "Oh, your class goes by so quick." I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I made it exciting for you. But my best day actually happened, well, in the summertime. I used to work for Lutheran Social Services, and I was essentially a tutor for Burmese refugees. So these are kids who have lost their families. They came into the United States under UN protection, and they were basically placed throughout the state. I was dealing with kids who were placed in Springfield, and they were put in Battle Creek Central. And it was basically my job to help them get through high school. And I had a student, his name was Koom, great kid. I tried to do it without crying. So anytime that he didn't know a word in English, he would write it down in a little book, and he would translate it into Burmese, then he would translate it into Tidium, and he would just ask you questions continually like, "Oh, what does this mean?" And so I worked with him for 3 years. I got to see him graduate. That was amazing. And then I saw him at Hire, actually, like right over here. I was like, "Well, how are you? I haven't talked to him in a while." He graduated from engineering school at Western. So he is now a mechanical engineer, speaks great English, a kid who barely spoke English when he got here. Crying. This is a kid who saw his parents, killed in front of him. And now he's just, he's a model citizen. And so it's nice to know that you had, sorry. It's nice to know that you had an impact on that kid's life.
Right. And you will have an impact on his children's lives and his grandchildren's lives as well because of what you did, because of what you all do. Thank you, Dustin. Anybody else want to follow that? Okay. Well, Marcia, I think we're done. Unless everybody kind of gather themselves, but does anybody on the call have any questions for the Our Toys? I kind of took all of our time. I apologize. I wanted to get them as much time as we could to kind of give you all feedback. But if anybody has any questions, they're open to questions, or you can send them to Sean or me or whomever.
As people are composing themselves again after that emotional, I just want to thank all of you for coming and sharing with us, and sharing the stories and volunteering to speak to groups and like that. We'll all be working on ways of getting you more involved in our universities too. But just want to thank you for fitting us into your really busy schedules and the hectic times. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And now if people have got compose themselves a little more, if you've got questions, we can stay on a little bit. Our next issue is actually lunch. So some of us can stay on and may want to ask some questions, but we're taking a little bit of a break. And so that gives us some flexibility in our schedule if people do want to hang on and ask a few questions. If not, for the Dartep group, we will come back at 11:45. Some of us will just hang on and answer questions or chat as people want and need. Thank you again for organizing this also.
I have a question. Thank you all, first of all, for everything that you've done. It was a phenomenal hour. What a great uplifting hour for us. To see as higher ed how things are going on in the field and continuing to grow and get better in the field. That's awesome for us to see. We run at Siena Heights, a small faith-based school. We run 4 one-credit seminars freshman, sophomore, junior, senior SEMs. And we have a structure for each one of them. It's all of the teacher stuff that's not academic driven, that we can't find classes to put them in. And it's been such a benefit for our students to have these 1-credit seminars. We're finding that the junior SEM is about as early as we can go to have something like this stick, because they're really into their clinicals by then. Freshmen and sophomores, they're still observation, beginning to be participant, but now they're really getting in the participant stage. And so it's just a very selfish question. How do we go about getting you all, if we could, to just pop on for 30 minutes, 40 minutes of one class or 2 classes, just to have some feedback, kind of like what we just did, but to fire up our juniors about the fact that here's some things that we wish we would have had in college, but we didn't get. Or here's what we wish we would have had, and we're seeing that you're getting it, right? So that they can see that what they're doing in their program here is on track, and then maybe to fill in some gaps for them so that we can send them out having had what they need. So how would we go about doing that? It might be from Kate to start with. I don't know how that all works, so I'll be quiet now.
First, Sally, thank you for the questions and the invitations. I think they would all be willing to do that. We have a form to fill out, but you can also reach out to them directly to have them come and speak or do virtual or in person, whatever you would like them to do with the teacher candidates. We just ask that you let us know too, so we can promote that and kind of give them some support as they go into your arena. They're very well versed, as you can see. I'm not concerned about that. We just like to know what they're doing so we can help them.
Sure.
So you can go through Sean, you can go through me, you can go through any of the RTOYs. We just ask the RTOYs let us know what if they're doing this kind of thing.
Awesome. Great.
And Mindy Keck at CMU again, sorry, I'm giving shout outs to CMU, but she has a great way of setting this type of thing up. So if you'd like to reach out to her as well, that would be a good stepping stone.
Perfect. All right, good. Thanks for the head shakes. Yes, that's a positive right there.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
You'll be hearing from me.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
I have a question. Some of you have mentioned that you're teaching for some of your local higher ed institutions and like that. If we also know and can gather from you those that are interested in part-time teaching or things like that, we can make sure that our various offices know that availability too. And so whether it's coordinated through Sean or you just send me a direct note, if you let us know what your availability is and your interest in doing that work, we'll be glad to make sure that people both close to you and farther away, because some of it can be done through online settings these days, know your availability and interest, because we're always looking for that voice in our programs, and we're also looking for advice. And I think this group would also be a great one for many of us to draw on for some panels, advisory panels and things like that. And we'd love to be able to reach out to you to get that type of support.
That would be an amazing list if we could get that put together of all the RTOYs and their backgrounds and maybe their availability. Yeah.
I'll put that in the chat for you.
Thank you. Well, not hearing anybody step in. I've been practicing my wait time, but I also know that everybody has other things that they can and should be doing right now. I again want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories with us. And we look forward to working with you in new and different ways in the future. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
y'all.
you.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, for those of you still on the call, we will reconvene at 11:45. Or whenever people start popping back in.
Well, Marcia, we're all assembled. Tara is here and logged on. So we could proceed to the next phase.
I think that would be great. Welcome back, everyone. And we next have the Education Policy Innovation Collaborative to share with us. And we want to thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Let me just share my, oh, I can't share my screen, but you have my slides up here. Great. Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name is Tara Kilbride. I'm the Assistant Director for Research at EPIC. EPIC stands for Education Policy Innovation Collaborative, and we're based out of the College of Education at MSU. So today I'm going to present some results from our most recent report on Michigan's teacher shortages. Next slide. Great. So just as a preview of what to expect, I'll give a little bit of background about what gave way to this work and some of the data and the methods that we use, and then break down some of the results and key findings from each of the 4 main sections of the report, and then end with a couple of overarching implications and common themes across the results, then hopefully leave some time for any questions. So for a little bit of background, these reports came about because of a law that requires an annual report on Michigan's teacher shortage, which has to include a few very specific items. So they ask for the number of educator vacancies, educator retention rates, the number of graduates from approved in-state teacher prep programs, and an analysis of the regions in the state that present the highest need based on shortages in those areas. They ask for each of these things both overall and within various subgroups and content areas. Last year, we put out an initial report that was really more about assessing the state of the data, what is and isn't available, and what it can and can't tell us. So just to recap that in a much briefer form, this list here is what the NCTQ recommends as the baseline for what states should report to provide actionable information that policymakers and education leaders need to address shortages. And all of these data elements are available to some extent in Michigan, but a lot of them do come with caveats. Like in some cases, they're only reported for certain types of teachers or certain types of districts. In some cases, the information that's reported, even if it is required, isn't always complete or reported in a way that's very informative. In other cases, the data might have a complete coverage and reporting, but the same numbers could be interpreted different ways depending on the context and what's going on in a particular district. So it certainly aren't all straightforward, but we do have a good baseline to start from as long as we understand the limitations. Next slide. Part of that first report last year was also offering a number of recommendations for how to improve the data to be able to better study the shortage. And while we're starting to see some evidence that the data are improving, this is certainly a long-term effort. So in this year's report and likely in the coming reports, we'll be able to do a little more each year, but it's going to take a long time before we can really understand in the way that we'd like the state of the shortages and the nature of those shortages in a more precise way. So just as a couple of examples, looking at teacher vacancies. Districts aren't required by law to report them, and very few districts do, though there have been a lot of targeted communications to increase this, which clearly have been working. We see these large increases in this top graph here, but even at its peak, 94 districts is out of more than 800 in the state. We're not getting a complete picture statewide of vacancies. There's a lot still that we don't know. For a second example, looking at this bottom graph, when a teacher exits their district, that district does have to report a reason for the exit, which could be valuable information in helping us understand the reason for turnover and how that contributes to shortages. But more and more often for years, we were seeing districts report these exits with the category listed as other. So that doesn't really tell us much about why a teacher is exiting. And for the last several years, the majority of teacher exits, more than half, have been reported with that uninformative category. We did finally see a slight decrease for the first time in the most recent year, but there's a long way to go to be able to have a comprehensive picture of the reasons why teachers exit when they do. So given all of these limitations, rather than try to just address the specific questions and requirements for the legislatively mandated report directly, we also include any indirect or alternative yet still imperfect indicators that are related to these topics to give us a more complete picture and see additional sides of the story and build more context where necessary. To assess for the last requirement, who is or isn't experiencing the severe shortages, where are they more severe, less severe? Again, because none of these indicators on their own really give us a perfect way to identify whether there is a shortage in a certain area or how severe that shortage is. What we do is that we look across all of these different indirect and imperfect indicators and see where there are common themes. Where is there consistent and repeated evidence that's consistent with more severe shortages? And that's where we believe we have, where we believe they're likely the most severe based on the limited data available. Next slide. And next slide. So let's start looking through the results from each required report section, starting with vacancies. First, we looked just overall at the number of teaching positions that districts reported each year, both the positions that were reported as being permanently filled and the ones that were reported as vacant. So if we look at the combined total for both the dark green and light green bars, those are just the statewide totals overall. And based on that, it seems as though there were slight increases in filled teaching positions over the last 5 years about. And a lot of interesting changes in the total number of vacancies, where there was a large increase in 2017-18, followed by a decrease and another increase. What we found when we dug in a little deeper was that these patterns were driven largely by one specific type of teacher. And these are teachers who are contracted through Michigan Virtual, who typically provide virtual instruction to students in many different districts. I think about 25 or 30 on average at the same time. And each of those districts reports that teacher as an employee, which changes these numbers in a pretty drastic way. So if we looked at just these dark green bars and ignore the light green, we see that there has been a pretty consistent trend in the number of filled teaching positions, with maybe a slight increase in the most recent year and much less fluctuation in reported vacancies than it had initially looked. Now, the use of and reliance on virtual teachers, both from Michigan Virtual and other other third-party virtual course providers, as well as teachers in general who provide instruction to students in multiple schools or multiple districts. These could be things that we'd expect to see more of when there are vacancies. So we use this also as an alternative indicator because we know that we can't always observe the vacancies that districts have. So we do see increases between 2018-19 and 2021-22 in the number of teachers who work in multiple schools, teachers who work in multiple districts, teachers who are contracted through Michigan Virtual, and teachers who are listed as the teacher of record for third-party virtual courses. The numbers of these teachers have all increased, but also the average number of sites where each of these teachers works or provides instruction virtually has also increased. So these types of teaching positions that aren't what we typically think of as somebody who's dedicated to a single building in a single district are becoming more common, and the teachers in those positions are reaching a broader range of districts and students. As another alternative indicator, we look at the rates at which teaching positions are filled by under-credentialed teachers. What we mean by that is a teacher who's either not fully certified and working under a temporary credential, like a full-year substitute permit, and teachers who are certified but don't have an appropriate endorsement for the content area that they're teaching. So in the same period of time, we've seen increases in the number of these temporary credentials that are issued. And we also just look at differences in what types of teachers tend to be, or more likely or less likely to be considered under-credentialed. So in these maps, you can see how these rates vary across different parts of the state and across different types of teachers. A couple of patterns that pop out: science teachers across the state are the most likely to be under-credentialed. And in some parts of the state, we see quite a few under-credentialed special education and ELA teachers. Next, we look at retention, and we group in with that mobility and attrition. So here we see the trends in the number of teachers entering the profession and the number exiting from the fall of one year to the fall of the next year. Now, I'm going to focus in on just the 3 most recent years so we could see what's been happening during the pandemic and in the wake of the pandemic. So in 2019-20, about the same number of teachers were entering and exiting, so no net change. But in 2020-21, we see both of those rates decrease, a slight decrease for the number exiting and a pretty sharp decrease for the number entering. But both of those rates increased pretty sharply in 2021-22. Ultimately, there were more new teachers entering than there were teachers exiting, but those large spikes after a decrease could mean that teachers were delaying major employment changes, like starting a new teaching job or leaving their job during the more turbulent year in 2020-21, and had made those changes in the following year instead. Here we look at the number of teachers who switched schools within the same district or switched to different districts. And the one change that pops out immediately here is that in 2020-21, there was an enormous decline in the number leaving their district for another district, hitting the lowest rate at any point within the time span for which we have data. And then in 2021-22, it climbed to a higher level than it had been at any point within this time range. So this is consistent with that same explanation that perhaps teachers were delaying major employment changes like leaving their district until 2021-22, when most districts had resumed in-person instruction. Here, we look at another aspect of retention and how often teachers are maintaining their certificates. So what we call recertification is just referring to the percentage of teachers who either renewed their certificates or progressed to a more advanced certificate within a year of when their certificate expired. And here, these rates represent people whose certificates expired in the 2020-21 school year. And we show these separately for a number of subgroups to highlight how they differ. So we see some notable differences between teachers of different races and ethnicities, where white teachers are recertifying at the highest rate, Asian teachers at the lowest rate, and Black and Latino teachers in the middle. There are also clear patterns across age groups, where teachers in their 20s are the least likely to recertify. And this increases with each age group from 20s to 30s, 30s to 40s. For teachers in their 50s and in each age range above 50s, we start to see those decline as people get closer to retirement. And finally, we perhaps see some of the biggest differences is based on whether the person is actively teaching at the time their certificate expires. So if somebody's actively teaching when their certificate expires, nearly all of them maintain their certificate. If they had taught previously, but were no longer teaching at the time that it expired, about half would recertify, and just over a quarter of teachers who were certified but have never taught, at least within the public school system, they're much less likely to recertify. Next, we look at teacher preparation. So first, we look at just trends in the number of initial certificates that are issued. If the same person were to earn multiple certificates, we're only counting them once. So it's the number of teachers who are newly becoming certified each year. And after several years of declines, we did see these numbers start to increase over a few year period, starting around 2017. But following the pandemic, these have started to decrease again. We also considered, well, where are these newly certified teachers going to teach? So this larger map here shows the locations where first year teachers are worked in 2021-22 for the ones who had graduated from in-state teacher prep programs. And well, overall, we see first year teachers in most areas of the state. When we look just within certain specialization areas, that's not always true. So one that pops out pretty much immediately is world language, where newly certified teachers with world language endorsements are concentrated within a pretty limited area of the state. In some subject areas, you see very few going to the Upper Peninsula and parts of the northern half of the Lower Peninsula. So a lot of the patterns in where teachers are going after they graduate are closely related to where they graduated from. So we found that overall, just about half or a little over half of all Michigan teachers took their first teaching jobs in districts that were 30 miles from their prep institution or closer, but there was a lot of variation across institutions. So here are just a few examples to highlight how much they differ. Where Wayne State or graduates from Wayne State nearly always stay within 30 miles. At the other extreme is Central Michigan, where only 15% do, and Grand Valley is right in the middle, where 52% stay within that close range. These 9 institutions had the highest percentages of students who remain close to the area where they did their teacher preparation. Nearly all of these are in the southeastern part of the state. A lot are in the Metro Detroit area, which makes sense intuitively that these are more highly populated areas where there are likely more districts, more teaching jobs available. But it is interesting that so few teachers from these institutions go to certain parts of the state, very few in the Upper Peninsula or in other rural areas in the Lower Peninsula. Now this is the other extreme. This is the 9 institutions with the lowest percentages of graduates who stayed within 30 miles. And these institutions are mostly in Central Michigan and in the Upper Peninsula. So part of this pattern could be, it could be that a lot of these graduates would be moving out to some more populated areas where there are more teaching jobs available. But that doesn't seem to be explaining all of it, because there are graduates who go to all sorts of other areas in the state, from some institutions to certain rural areas, but they're not always making it to all areas of the state, and there are clearly differences across institutions. Now, these are the 9 in the middle, where there's a fair amount of teachers who stay within the local area and a fair amount that go to more distant areas for their first teaching jobs. A lot of the preparation institutions in the Grand Rapids area seem to fall into this category. I'm not sure that any other major patterns popped out here, though. And for the final section of the report, this is where we kind of synthesize all of this information to see, where do we see consistent patterns suggestive of more severe shortages in certain regions.
Yeah, let me mute that.
So any area that has a darker shade of green here is an area that we identified as likely having a more severe shortage compared to other areas in the state. If every area in the state was experiencing shortages, then this simply means which are more severe than others, but doesn't necessarily tell us whether or not there is a shortage in a given area. So we see in some places where there are shortages in some subject areas, but not in others, and then other areas that seem to be in need of all types of teachers. We also see in some cases there are very dark regions, very close to very light regions, which would indicate that there's an inequitable distribution of teachers across close neighboring districts, where there's likely more advantaged or better funded districts that are attracting more of the teachers in those areas, and not necessarily a lack of teachers overall. Now, if we compare this overall estimated extent of shortage map alongside the map from earlier showing that where graduates were going for their first teaching jobs, there are a few areas where we see there are extreme shortages, but that graduates don't seem to go, or that very few graduates are going on to teach. So a few of those overarching implications and themes across these findings. First, teacher shortages are very local. The types of shortages, the reasons for the shortage, the extent, the specific challenges in finding teachers to fill their needs, these can vary a lot, sometimes even within districts in the same small region of the state. So it's important to recognize those differences and to make sure that the policy solutions are diverse enough to fit these different needs and work for different types of districts with different challenges. Second, it might not be enough just to increase the number of new teachers overall, because if we're recruiting the same types of teachers and they're likely to go to the same types of places where teachers have historically went, then we could still be missing a lot of these areas that are underserved, where graduates are less likely to choose to teach. We know from prior research that teachers tend to choose jobs in locations that are either close to or similar to the communities where they grew up, or the areas they went to school. And often the locations where they did their student teaching placements are highly predictive of where they choose to teach later on. So it'll be important to focus a lot of recruitment efforts on the types of teachers that are more likely to teach in the areas that really need them. So people who are from the types of communities with more severe shortages, and to think about student teaching placements as also a way to encourage people to stay in those same sorts of areas. So placing more student teachers in high needs districts, and focusing efforts to ensure that their experiences there are positive, and these are all evidence-based ways that can increase the chances of teachers choosing to remain in those districts after building those relationships and doing their student teaching placements. A lot of the initiatives and strategies that MDE has been using to address shortages are consistent with these ideas that we need diverse options to address very local challenges that certainly aren't a one-size-fits-all. So some examples are the Grow Your Own initiatives, which help local districts to recruit teachers from their communities to work in their communities. Also registered apprenticeship programs and recruitment programs aimed at students who are still in their K-12 education to help them explore teaching as a career option and work towards credentials to help them pursue those careers. And now I'm hoping we have a few minutes left for questions. I can see that there are a few in the chat, but I think some of them may have been addressed already.
I was wondering, when looking at the uncredentialed science and special education teachers, for example, because those are areas where there are lots of different kinds of credentials you can get in those areas, are they counted as uncredentialed if they have a science or special education certification, but not the right one for their position? Or were we looking at an exact match of whether or not they were certified to teach the group they were teaching?
We had used a crosswalk from MDE about which endorsements can be used for which specific assignments. So it's not always a one-to-one match of the assignment code and endorsement codes. There are some that can be used more broadly for different assignments. With the science teachers specifically, we noticed that a lot of the people who were being considered under-credentialed were certified teachers with some sort of science endorsement, but perhaps maybe a biology endorsement, teaching a chemistry class, that sort of thing. And I think the reason why, or at least our theory for why the rates were so bad for science was that those endorsements are more specialized than in some other subjects like mathematics. There's just a single math endorsement that qualifies a teacher for any math course. But the science endorsements, there's just a number of more specialized specific options available.
I was thinking about that and how this is likely to look when we roll out the new grade bands, particularly the science, and I expect the social studies ones, and how that will look. And I expect if we're using what MDE allows, I don't know if that will cover, like if you have a 3-6 certification, you're teaching pre-K 3, because schools don't have to ask for a waiver for that. So I assume that those would all count as appropriately credentialed.
Right. And
those teachers aren't out there yet, but they're coming. They're coming.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is a good thing to flag early. I'm not sure how those will fit into MDE's definitions and calculations. But I'm thinking that for our analyses, we'll probably want to look at a number of things. Are they certified at all for the appropriate grade range? Or do they have any endorsement for this content area, whether or not it's the right grade range and that sort of thing, to better understand how that change is affecting this. Were there any other questions?
I'll ask a question of the group. And just what you've seen here, and I know we all need more time to dig into the slides and the data. What trends or things surprised you that you saw in that? Any insights or like that you want to talk more about?
I'm sorry, were you asking the group for their reactions or me? I thought you were asking.
Either one.
One surprising finding for us, I think, was just how much the profession is changing in terms of types of teaching assignments, where some of the simpler numbers that we may have looked at in the past are perhaps getting outdated, where we have to kind of think about these different types of teachers and understand which metrics maybe need to be revised to accommodate those kinds of changes, and understand what it means for a district to have a teacher who's located and based in one school, and how the interactions differ for a teacher who travels or a teacher who works across several different districts through a virtual program. I would love to hear, though, if others have were surprised by any data points, at least initially, without having had much time yet to digest them.
I'm Jennifer Heisler from Siena Heights. I'm going to echo your surprise as well. I didn't know you could be employed at more than one district. And I'm also surprised at the number of virtual teachers for that 153% increase. I feel like that was something I saw. So I'm very surprised at those numbers.
I agree. And yes, 153 was definitely the percentage, I believe, for teachers who are contracted through Michigan Virtual specifically.
Yeah. And I guess I just didn't realize it was such a high percentage of teachers. And maybe, do you think that maybe that number will change as we come out of the pandemic, that maybe that number was so high because of the pandemic and everyone learning from home?
I expect that definitely was part of the increase being so large, but we had seen an increasing trend that started in years before the pandemic. So it seems like this is also a way that districts, especially in rural areas, have been able to expand their course offerings. And I know there have been a number of policy changes that have expanded students' access to those types of courses and opportunities. So I think these are all kind of intersecting to create this increasing trend, but it will be interesting to see whether it levels off, or whether many of those positions kind of disappear as we get further out from the pandemic.
Seems like a related question that all of us need to grapple with is, what type of preparation are we doing for our candidates in teaching in those virtual settings? Because everybody had to during the pandemic, but what are the long-term implications about the skill sets that are going to be needed?
It's an interesting question that I think a lot of others in this group probably have a lot more insight than I would about, what type of preparation they're providing for that type of instruction, whether that's a component of most or some programs that they offer.
There's a question in the chat too. Are there maps showing the age of current teachers?
I don't believe that we've shown any patterns in age regionally. That's something we could consider for a future report, though.
I'm engaged in a research project for general education teachers. Our general education, specifically early childhood and elementary teachers, prepared to teach in an inclusive classroom. And your data shows some gaps in the teachers, the special education teachers are few and far between. And so it leads me to believe that there are more and more inclusive classrooms. Did you get any data on those?
I don't think we looked at this specifically, though. Recent changes in data collection for how students are assigned to teachers should allow us to do that better in the future than we have in past years. So that's certainly an interesting and important area to look into. Our special education breakdowns may even in some cases be a little rosier than reality, because we can't always identify whether a special education teacher has the right types of special education endorsements for the types of students that they work with. We don't always have enough information to know that. So it's certainly an area that we'd like to dig into more, especially as better data are continually becoming available.
I'm finding myself really intrigued by and worried about the inequitable distribution of teachers. And I'm curious about how we can learn more about our local patterns with the data that you've collected, and if we could work with you to find out more about that at our sort of local levels. And I'm following up also on the question in the chat about the maps. I'm thinking, how do we use any of this information to make some predictions about possible trends in building out new programs or endorsement areas or school partnerships? I see in the chat some more additional data is available. Great, thank you.
It may not have exactly what you're looking for, but it is a great foundation for examining both statewide, and it allows you to drill in more deeply on some information, especially around like given districts across the state. So this is on the My School data, which also, that's a wealth of information around both student populations and educator populations that can at least give you, that start to answering some questions. MDE also produces an annual report on educator workforce. I'm going to give the link in there that can serve, again, as a good foundation. If you have additional data questions, we're happy to help either facilitate conversations with EPIC or see if we can get you the data that you may need as well. EPIC, they are our main partner, but they are also, very spread thin on all that we ask them to do for us. So yeah, please start in these and reach out if you have additional needs, and we can see whether we already have the data available or can connect you with the data.
Well, thank you. This has been really enlightening. Do we have any other final questions? We've got about 5 minutes left that we've allocated for this discussion, but hearing none, I'm going to say thank you so much. And you've given us a lot to try to dig into and think about in different ways. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. And if more questions come up in the future or ideas about the type of information that would be helpful, we'd love to hear more. So please feel free to reach out.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. So we've got scheduled a 10-minute break in here. Or no, we don't. Sorry, wrong. Looking down too far. We're going to move into MDE updates.
That sounds good to me. Thank you. All right, we've got several things for you today. We'll probably end up having maybe more break time at the end, but hopefully more conversation time. First, want to welcome new staff to our team. Marcy Melton is our new administrative assistant, overseeing or supporting the educator prep units and the data and accountability unit. That is her email address. So you start seeing, if you haven't already, emails from her that relate to this. Jenny Dickens, who many of you have probably met through our GYO work, and if you haven't, then you'll meet her soon. She's our new education consultant in the Future Proud Michigan Educator Grow Your Own programs within our recruitment and retention unit. Biographies of all of these individuals are in the Dartep written updates, by the way, so go look through those. Go to the next. And on Monday, we will welcome Dante Watson as our newest manager for the recruitment and retention unit. I do not have an email address for him yet. There's a little placeholder for me to put that in. It will surely be Watson D and then some number at michigan.gov. But we will welcome him with open arms on Monday morning. This coming Monday. Always a reminder, take a look at those written updates, again, issued quarterly, archived on the Dartep website. We try to have callbacks to things in there, and instead of giving you a lot of like things you could already read in these MDE updates, we'd like to be able to build on that. And those went out earlier this week. All right, so the legislative update. One of these items is referenced in the written update, and that is the House Bill 4038 to modify requirements to serve as a substitute teacher. This is a replication of a previous bill that allows individuals who do not have 60 credits to receive a sub-permit if they hold a high school diploma. And for those going to grades 9 through 12, they're either over 21 or enrolled in and supervised by an approved EPP. We'd had that limited term one in the 21-22 year. And so this is a new incarnation of that to go through the 23-24 school year. That is in the House Education Committee, as is, this 4044, which eliminates pay freezes during contract negotiations. That's in the House Labor Committee. That was brought there end of last month. Neither of these committees have had any focus on workforce-related bills. They've just been focusing entirely on budget supplementals, budget questions, and read by grade 3, which you will have seen, I'm sure, in the news, the Senate reporting out deletion of the retention portion of read by grade 3. The first budget proposals for Governor Whitmer's second term are going to be presented to lawmakers next week out at Heritage Hall. And so plug for Heritage Hall. If you've not been to the Capitol in a while, we have this brand new sort of interpretation center, a new entrance to the Capitol. It's quite nice, has nice meeting space, little historical walk. That's where she'll present that, and there will be a joint meeting of House and Senate Appropriations Committees on February 8th at 11 a.m. For that work. All of those committee meetings are broadcast live on the internet, so you can tune in and get a sneak peek. This is speaking of legislative initiatives and MDE support, Dr. Rice recently sent a letter to the legislators, similar to what he did last year with our call for reinvestments in teacher preparation. And you may have seen this, what Michigan must do and stop doing to rebuild education. If you haven't, there's a QR code to it. This op-ed went into Bridge Magazine, but also got picked up in Lansing City Pulse, I know locally, and I think I've seen the headline pop up in other newspapers. But it's quite an extensive laundry list of policy options for, or a menu, I think is perhaps a better term, for legislators, which he calls addition by subtraction, which means taking some things away, like that retention component of RBG3. And addition by addition, such as taking these grow your own funds, making them recurring, so that they, and then adding more money into that grow your own pot. So two of the options listed there. So we have that recent release. So speaking of the grow your own grant, the application window closed on Tuesday, on the 31st, and a big heroic thank you to everybody who dug in on these partnership agreements and got our district's application materials ready to go. We got 222 applications. 90 of those are for working with candidates going through alternative routes. 61 are for those going through degree granting programs. And 71 include a blend of programs, both alternative route and degree granting. The total amount requested is over $235 million, which exceeds the amount budgeted. And so we will be having to do some competitive review. I mean, we would have to anyways because there are federal funds involved. Right now, the applications are undergoing a preliminary administrative review to find whether applications are complete, for example, and whether applications are identifying eligible partners for participation. So application comes through and it's all about working with Western Governors University, that's going to be rejected, and whether or not there's a quality partnership agreement in there for that, because this is exclusively for working with Michigan educator preparation or approved educator preparation providers. We project awardee announcements on April 6th. So after the preliminary administrative review, these will go to review teams for scoring. And we hope to have recommendations for funding to the superintendent in March, so that by April 6th, we can make those announcements. This is a periodic reminder that these two programs, the Michigan Future Educator Fellowship and the Michigan Future Educator Student Teacher Stipend, are run through the Department of Treasury. Again, all questions related to timelines on these, logistics, should be going to the Department of Treasury. And the My Student Aid website there gives you all of the contact information and all of the nuts and bolts that they have published on these two programs. There was a webinar, so all the webinars are linked there too. There was one last week on the process for distributing the fellowship and stipend funds, because that money is starting to roll out and be available to districts to draw down. And so they went through the nuts and bolts of that for districts. And that money should be, again, rolling out. We're going to cover those people that were from the fall, and then start working on the people who are applying for the winter. So the money will start to flow. Again, Treasury is going to be our big thing. We've been talking a lot about innovation and innovative programs, and we've mentioned we've been featuring preparation innovators at the state board meeting. In our December meeting, we had Joe from NMU and James from Saginaw Valley, as well as Christy Gibson from East Point Community Schools, speaking about their innovative programs and partnerships to the board. It was very well received presentation. And then we followed it up in January with Christine from Eastern, as well as Sherry from Van Etter from Washtenaw Intermediate School District, and then Paula and Jennifer from Central Michigan to review their programs. As you can maybe detect from this, these two images, we have a new composition to the board in January that we didn't have in December, including Mitch Robinson from Michigan State University as one of our newest board members. This presentation was also well received. I sent out a Dartep announcement with links to those videos for watching. And what was fun is in both cases, somebody said, I can't wait to send this to my parents to watch. So I hope your parents enjoyed the show. So that was pretty great. Let's go to the next. Before I go back, we will have more presentations like this to the board. In March, we'll be featuring 2 alternative route programs, both #Teach as well as University of Michigan Flint. And then we have a planned further presentation in May. Okay, now I'll go next. Okay, for program review and program applications, those applications that were submitted in the November 22 window are currently in team review phase. And we expect feedback to our EPPs by mid-April. The next phases of submissions, of course, are in April and then again in November. We've received some questions about program offerings and timelines, particularly around, can we delay the launch of programs so that they can coincide all of them together? Can we delay submission till we can submit all of our programs together? And other things about when projected graduates will come out of these programs compared to the MTTC dates and the sunsetting of the old ones and the onboarding of the new ones, plus a host of EPP specific factors. So this is something we do want to have conversations with you all about, and we could probably come back to this here during our updates time, because we have a pretty generous amount of time for you to talk through some things. Our consultants have been working diligently on helping programs think through how to onboard a new program, phase out an old program, and whether or not there's capacity to run multiple programs at the time. We recognize that that's not going to be the case for everything. All right, so let's go here. A couple reminders. Visual arts and music education standards, the work to update those will begin in early summer of this year, and we will need obviously faculty and program coordinators in these areas, and cooperating teachers, new career teachers, veteran teachers, whoever you've got. You reach out to Gina, who is scoping out the project and starting to build our stakeholder engagement list. The next. Reading and math specialist standards development. We anticipated a long time getting into this, but again, it's currently on pause, pending some other MDE-wide initiatives in literacy and numeracy, specifically looking at the K-12 standards in K-12 academic standards in ELA and in mathematics, so that we can ensure that as we build specialist roles, they're going to be well aligned and not at cross purposes with what the academic standards are. We don't have a lot of details on exactly what kind of work our colleagues across the department are going to be doing in that review. So until we do, we keep these two launches on pause. But our contacts, of course, are Aklam for the reading and Darcy for mathematics, to reach out with any volunteers to serve or other questions about those credentials. And I would like Darcy to turn on her mic and tell us a little bit about the support that she is working with for science program revisions. This is quite a Herculean effort. And she's been tireless in working our science community. So, Darcy?
Well, our implementation team is really the ones who have been very tireless. So I really appreciate all the hard work that they've put in. Most of the things on this slide here really are reminders. So there's not much new here. We did host our first networking session. And so we will send the recording of that out soon. We have our one-day, and our next one is coming up in February on the 17th. And we'll have a one-day symposium at MSTA for all folks interested or interested in learning more about the standards, working on revising programs. So we'd be thrilled to have anyone join us there. And then just a reminder, it's not an action item. Many of you already did this, but a reminder, if you haven't, please send me names and emails of any science folks on your campus that would like to be on our list for more information. I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Darcy. Following up from last time, we talked about professional practices and developing EPP specific technical assistance around those key things. Continue to send training suggestions to our team at that MDE professional practice at michigan.gov email address, and Nadia will pick those up and use that training suggestions in the subject line. That will get right into her queue and thinking for that. You know, what questions that you have and what you'd like to see. My understanding is we have some robust stuff to work with, but we continue to want more in that to make it relevant and most excellent. And a big thing to notice is that it is professional practice at michigan.gov, not professional practices at michigan.gov. So if you send something and didn't get an auto reply, you may need to resend it. All right. Again, our periodic reminder, we are on social media, both the three big social media sites. At Michigan Educator is where we post things, again, using that hashtag Proud Michigan Educator or hashtag PME to promote the excellent things that are going on in your programs, both for candidates and for graduates. And that leaves us a robust amount of time, I promised, for Q&A and conversation perhaps around those questions about program timelines and some of the pressures that you have in onboarding these new programs.
I'll start off with a question of when do we think that the secondary social studies standards are going to go to the board, and so that we can have the full suite of secondary programs?
They are scheduled to be presented to the board February 14th. That's my Valentine's Day gift. I'm super excited. And then they'll go for public comment through March 16th. So we would love to have a robust amount of public comment. So please mark that date. That would be very helpful. And if all goes according to plan, then we would bring them back for approval to the board in May.
So it was alluded to, but I know several of us have reached out that we would like to put all of our secondary ed programs up at the same time. And with that delay, that means that some of the MTTC tests, especially for math and English language arts, will be sunsetting if we hold off. I know that Western cannot be the only one in that situation, and I'm seeing nods and like that from others around. And so what are the prospects of being able to bring them up together and not have to do them up in stages? Or what support for those of us that are grappling with those discussions?
Yeah, well, we have a couple of things that were easily within our control on this to support it. One is our sunset dates for the current MTTCs are just projections right now, as are, of course, the onboarding dates for the new ones. Science are in development. The social studies are not. They will not start development until the standards are approved. And so there's a lot of leeway for pushing those sunset dates back on those current programs to maximize your capacity to teach out and in a reasonable timeline, and then start teaching in with the new folks. You know, we're never committed to a sunset date until we are absolutely sure that the new test is there and ready to go. So yeah, there is that flexibility, so we can work. It makes sense to be able to bundle programs. And we've been promoting this braiding concept, right, of throughout this whole process, and we're serious about it. And we don't want to unfairly penalize a program just because, well, they can't get this group of people out by an arbitrary date. Yep, that brings up in that not just if new tests are available, but also if the completers of the programs went through a program that matches the test. You know, our ideal is that you have your candidates complete a standards aligned program that matches the standards that are on the test, and then they get the endorsement code that matches up to those standards and that test. And we will get there, but during this transition period, it's going to be messy, and we don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. And in getting our goal is a quality teacher, regardless of what it says on their certificate. And so with PK3 and 3.6, we were able to support some piloting of our PK3 tests and our 3.6 tests with programs that had people who were graduating early, going through accelerated programs for the new standards. But they were going to finish before the tests were officially available. So we were able to work out a plan that got them certified via participation in the practice test. For some BK folks, we had a situation where they were not going to be able, their graduation date was not going to even coincide with the pilot dates. So we worked out a deal where they could take the old test, get the new endorsement, and then commit to coming back and taking the practice test. We recognize there's a risk that people won't come back and do it because they've got their cert, so why should they? And trying to find ways to incentivize that coming back, because penalizing them is just not in the cards. Right? You didn't come back, we're going to take your cert. That's not right, unless we write up a deal that says that and people sign. But we're open to working out those kinds of deals, both with individual idiosyncratic institutional situations as well as more broadly applied.
Other questions?
Hi, this is Kim Pawelka. I'm the certification officer at Grand Valley State University. I did have a question I was asked to ask in regards to modern language programs. When do we have to stop admitting students into separate grade levels? For instance, elementary or secondary, as opposed to that K-12 program. And then as a part of that, do you have any thoughts on how we shift to that K-12 without language programs having new language standards? Would that be a matter, should they apply the K-12 professional standards? I know that's a mouthful. So I asked you 3 questions. No. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I heard them all. Ahlam, if you're on, would you like to speak up to those?
Sure.
There we go.
Hello, and thank you for that question, Kimberly. Each of the universities or EPPs that submitted for their review last June 2022, depending on the program that was reviewed, they received a letter for each program, and each program, there were some EPPs that had different decisions for each of the programs. So I would like to look up the specific program that you're referring to, and I can provide you specific information on that program. Is that okay?
Sorry, I just unmuted. Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Sure.
There is a good question in a couple good questions here in the chat. Social studies standards are approved by the board in May. Is there a projected timeline for the new exam? And I don't think we've not drawn one up yet, because we want to make sure that the standards go through and then not publish an arbitrary date that then gets published and used for that. But to give you a sense, we had the PK3 and the 3.6 standards were approved by the board in 2018, and the new tests debuted. They were operational, so you could test and get your score right away in 2022. So it was a 4-year build for those two pieces. So that gives you a sense of kind of how long it takes to build the test. With social studies and science, there's 2 complications. One is we're building the broad test for the core endorsement, but also building small disciplinary tests for the subdisciplines. So individuals who are getting one of those optional endorsements, like biology or history, can have an assessment that gets them there. So it's a few more tests. Question from Jamie, is there any thought to either having MTTC test takers require approval from their EPP, or a way for EPPs to block them from taking the wrong test, particularly the new upper and lower elementary tests? Yeah, so yeah, that need to pass 103. So people just taking the wrong test. That has been a conversation for a long time, and it actually has come through in Dartep, as well as in my pie when I was involved with that. Having a way where the universities don't let somebody take a test like you handle the registration of the tests. Like they have to have some sort of barcode from you in order to register for the test, and that you have a counseling piece that's involved there, and that's never gotten past the. That's an interesting and perhaps helpful idea, and oh gosh, what are we going to do with the 1,000 people that we have test every year, or the 1,000 tests? How could we do that without increasing our capacity to do so at an individual EPP? For those of you who have up to 20 test takers a year, probably not too hard to make them come in and then register them right there. For those who are much larger, and again, you're talking hundreds of test takers a year, that's not going to be the most manageable thing. So what I would defer to is if any of the institutions represented today have instituted any kind of advising sequence or registration policies or communication plans to candidates that are helping alleviate this.
I can speak to what we've done so far, and I'm sure others have done similar, but our students are entered into degree works and it maps out their courses, and on those advising sheets and in degree works, it specifies which tests they're supposed to take. It doesn't still stop somebody from finding the first test they think it sort of matches what they're supposed to take and signing up for the wrong one. But we have tried multiple ways of getting out the information about which tests they need. I think it will get easier if some of the tests are sunsetted, then there won't be quite as many options, but until that point.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be our practice. We know sunset. We moved into the next test, and there you go. That would have been problematic, to say the least, with this set. But yeah.
So, this is Laura Sickentel, certification at Western. Just to follow up on what Marcia said, we also, when our interns apply for certification or apply for their internship a year in advance, and at pre-intern orientations, when they apply for internship, and during their internship, for those who hadn't taken it yet, they get the proper test information at all of those points when they're really thinking about taking the test as well. But we had, in this last test, we had someone take 103, and then 3 of the 4 new PK3 tests. And we had a PE Health Ed who took the old PE Health Ed, 43 and 44, instead of 112 and 113. So it's really during this transition and that I'm most concerned. But I also appreciate that you're not sunsetting, because that really caused a problem. When you went from 83 to 103 and 82 to 106, that was really a problem for our students. So I appreciate not sunsetting, but how to keep students from paying money that they don't have to for tests that we can't use. So that's my follow-up on that, I guess. So I appreciate the conversation.
Couple of comments in the chat. A student who needs 103 took all 4 subtests for lower elementary, passed 1. Then they went and took the 3 subtests, passed 1. He's not responded to email, and each time called them. Well, that's not helpful. I'm thinking for the student, the full mailbox. So, well, one of the things that is within EPP's domain is vouchers, and you can invest in more vouchers. So we provide a set through our contract, but university can also invest in more vouchers. We typically use those to make something right, if somebody was misadvised or they took the wrong test and need to take a different one. then you know, that can help. We have some that we give out, particularly when institutions are out of vouchers. But I mean, to use a voucher, you have to get a code from whoever is giving it out to you. It might be, again, looking at different sizes and capacities and budgets, if we could build a system whereby through course fees or whatever, students got vouchers through you for the test they were taking. You could have a degree of insurance around they're taking the right test, because you would give them the voucher that matches, or the amount of voucher that matches. And you can't prevent somebody sort of independently going to the website and logging in and paying for a test and going from there. But you can control who you give a voucher to, and what I mean, and the eligibility roster is another piece, but that doesn't time in such a way that you can stop somebody necessarily from taking the test. So that's one possibility. I know there's at least one EPI that pays for everybody's first test attempt, or uses vouchers for everybody's first test attempt. And that gives some control to it. Jean mentioned having a what MTTC tests should I take document on the website. And yes, they have to read it, but it does direct them to the right tests. We have put up on our website, there's the current endorsement codes and tests. It's a table that shows you, like, here's what the endorsement is, here's what the code is, and then here's what the current test number is to help people draw that. It's one of the more common questions that comes into our helpline. And that resource was developed to specifically help support that. Common issues, people taking the 6-8 endorsement test without having taken the elementary education test. This happens, but the great good news is that it is possible to get a certificate with just those K-8 things on it without elementary. It was not possible for years, and not permitted by our rules. But it is possible to get a K-8 discipline endorsement without the elementary. There's a risk involved to the teacher, of course, that they get placed. If you're placed entirely in science and all you have is K-8 science and you're within grades K through 8, great. But the temptation, of course, of a district to move somebody outside of that, particularly at the elementary level, as well as the teacher being able to say, no, I can't take that assignment. There's going to be that risk out there. But it is possible. We do have people getting it today. It was, in fact, one of those things that made it's one of those things that made a program, out-of-state programs, a perverse incentive, because in other states someone could do that. So they would say, well, I'll just take a couch program offered by another state's thing. I'll get that program done. I'll apply to Michigan, and Michigan will match my certificate that is K-8 only, one discipline. And we don't want to create perverse incentives for going through out-of-state providers. We want to support the providers we have. What's the professional sequence required for a K-8 disciplinary without elementary? that is up to you. I mean, what coursework you're going to offer. You have, we're looking at old endorsement codes that are going out versus what's coming new. What professional sequence do they have right now for the 103 elementary, and why would that be any different for somebody who's got just a K-8 only? I think the situation tends to be more often the person who gets they're getting just the K-8 because for whatever reason they can't complete the requirements. Perhaps it's MTTC for the elementary all subjects. And in which case they'd have had all of those, the appropriate professional sequence. But before the professional sequences for the new standards, the new programs, the professional knowledge and skills pieces for K3, 3, 6, 5, 9, 7, 12, K12, sorry, PK12, we didn't have an official professional standards sequence that was reviewed by MDE and approved. So right now, these professional programs are being reviewed, peer reviewed and approved against standards, and then assessed via test. In the old cert system, we didn't have that. I think if you're in an institution young enough to have gone through an approval to become an EPP with, in the last 20 years, then your professional sequence was evaluated and moved on. But old professional sequences really weren't, just sort of an assurance that they were over 20 credits, and you could still mix and match things across the way. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in working with such candidates. And yes, Christine, the K-8 discipline endorsements will be gone with the grade banding. So as the 5, 9, and 7, 12 programs come into play, then those K-8 programs disappear in those content areas. We didn't sunset them out with the PK3 and 3.6 because there was that 6.8 piece that needed to be accommodated in the cert structure. So now that all of those pieces are in play for 3 of the 4 content areas, those will phase out those K-8 individual discipline endorsements. We've already had programs do that. They send us stuff saying we're started doing it with the PK3 and 3.6 and just not bothering with them.
John, this is Susan Everett from UM Dearborn.
Hi.
I'm wondering if we could shift just for a minute to talk about B2K. We are having difficulty recruiting students into the B2K. They're picking pre-K to 3 and 3 to 6 over that. And one of the questions that we have is about, in the future, what jobs will become limited to B2K certified teachers. So for instance, the GSRP, maybe some of the other programs. Is there any concern that Head Start teachers are in the future going to have to be certified? So can you provide any information that might help us with B2K?
Yeah, well, the birth to kindergarten is really conceptualized as a sort of a yes and for people pursuing early childhood education. So we know with under the old cert structure, the ZS plus the elementary We had people that really, that's all they wanted was that early piece. And we imagine some of those are going to be attracted to just the PK3, the PK3, but there are others who are pursuing it because they want to work below PK. And it's not that they need it, but some to simply have a job working in that space. But there are some places that did require that additional piece. So many of the employment, so we like Head Start's a great example, right? Being a Head Start lead teacher, we've had this degree programs at universities that's just an early childhood degree that qualified one to work in these centers, and those usually have pretty robust enrollments. One of our hopes was that the BK would be wedded into that space, so people could get that degree and then also get a birth to kindergarten. It wouldn't necessarily change their vision, their employment vision of working in, say, a Head Start center, but it would expand the things that they could do by being able to go into an ISD early childhood center or a local district's early childhood special education piece if they wanted to, so that there would be something attractive about coming out with double credentials. But if we're not seeing it, we're not seeing it. Or if you're not seeing it, I think I don't anticipate, say, Head Start suddenly requiring something that the majority of Head Start teachers don't already have. If that happened, that would come from, obviously the feds to go there. But we've been working with our colleagues in the Office of Special Education and Office of Great Start to publicize the birth to kinder. Like this is something, in the portfolio of possible credentials that are good for our GSRP schools and for other programs. This BK is going to be is a thing that you could pursue. But yeah, when we've got it in, it's one of those strange endorsements that there's not there. So let's take if I took grade 6, 3 through 6, there's sort of no public school employment scenarios in which I want to teach grades 3 through 6, and I could just do it without a certificate, or a permit, right? But BK is one of those places where, yeah, there are plenty of job scenarios where it doesn't require you to have a certificate. We don't anticipate places suddenly requiring it, but we would hope that differential pay, perhaps, ability to take on more leadership roles would be enhanced by having birth to kindergarten.
So this is Lisa at Ferris. So Ferris, we actually have students who have graduated from our bachelor's degree in early childhood who are coming back to add the BK because they want to work like in GSRP programs where the school district requires teacher certification. And they don't want to do the elementary because it's much longer or has a lot more credits for them to add that rather than just coming back and doing the birth K. So we're actually seeing more students coming back who've already had our bachelor's degrees saying, what do I need to take to get the birth K certification? So that's what we're seeing a lot of. We are seeing some of our students who originally wanted to do GSRPs, who they know that their school district that they want to work in had been requiring a teacher certification, and that was requiring the elementary ed with the ZS before this, who are now saying, I really don't want to teach anything higher than PK. And so I don't want to do the PK3 because I know they're going to move me if a position opens. And so we have some of them coming back to our early childhood bachelor's degree program, and we just added that as an option within our current program. So it's not a new program. It's here's the same old early childhood program we had. Here's a new option, which is the Birth K. And here's the courses you would take for that, just like we have, because we have a management track, we have a child life specialist track, we have the lead teacher track, which was and now we have a Birth K track. So students can say, well, I don't want to have to pay to take an MTTC, and I'm okay doing what I'm doing, so I'm going to just stay in the lead teacher track. And then we have students who say, I want to get that certification because I might want to teach kindergarten, or the school district I'm working in right now wants me to be certified to continue in my GSRP program. So we haven't seen a huge increase yet for that, but like I said, we've probably had about 6 or 7 students who have graduated with our with our bachelor's degree in early childhood coming back just to add the Birth K.
Nice, Audra. Audra put a comment in about OU opening a BK and K3 combined program, and the students can do that or combine the PK336, which is exactly the kind of combinations that we're hoping to see fostered with it.
Lisa, a question for you on your program. When the people are coming back and adding it on, are they adding it on at the graduate level or the undergraduate level?
At the undergraduate level, we have not put through a graduate level for that.
I'd imagine you may have graduates who were able to pass, people who are getting their ZS endorsement. We're never able to pass 103 or even 83 back that far, but we're able to pass their early childhood, and they may be out there. Those would be people you could reach out to and say, we have this new thing that is just early childhood. Would you be interested in coming back for a focused course of study and getting a certificate that is focused right in that area? I think something you ought to know as a flexibility that you have is we've been getting requests from individuals who've not done well on the 103 test, and they think maybe if I took this PK3, because that's really all I want to teach, I could do better, and maybe I could get certified there. And from our perspective, if the university has reasonable assurance that that candidate is strong in that narrower grade band and the things that are encompassed by the standards, and they're able to test, we are okay with you saying, let's try you on this other track. Recognizing it is going to be more expensive, although if some of these folks have taken the 103 test so many times already that it's not that much more to add the PK3 onto it. We're comfortable with that. Again, it's part of trusting your judgment as professional educators, that the professional educators of educators, that the programs that they've completed, the employment experiences they've had, the experiences they've had in your courses, provide a reasonable assurance of proficiency in the standards. And if you can make that case and they're able to pass a test better, then that's okay. We can do that. We've been doing this with some out-of-state people. So this has been a question in the past about well, what do you think? How is the new tests or the new grade bands going to help people or hinder people going out of state? What we're finding is people who are coming from out of state who have more limited grade band certificates are performing better now on the new test than they were on the old test. because simply the new test encompasses a narrower range that's more in line with what they had coming in. And so it's reducing a hurdle for some of those out-of-state people to get into the classroom.
So I have a question about that, because we had a student who did that. She had taken the 103 about 5 times and has failed it.
Yeah.
Took all of the lower L, passed them all.
Nice.
In her case, she was fine, and I did make the recommendation in MOEX to go ahead and approve her. But what if I have a student who we don't like? In the old program, they had the minors, and they say we're a math integrated science minor, had very few classes in language arts, but for some reason was able to pass those. I can deny their endorsement in that area if I don't feel they have the skills they need to do that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's just because someone passes a test doesn't mean they deserve a certificate. So, because we get that question quite a bit too. I went and took this test. Can I just have my cert, please?
Yeah.
Why do I have to go to a school and have them tell me that? Have them evaluate me? No. Maybe you're a good test taker.
Right. Well, and we have someone who recently too graduated. She graduated from our early childhood degree. She's working in a school. The school principal has said, oh, you just need to take the elementary ed test, and if you pass it, your university will certify you. And we've told her we won't, because she hasn't had any of the courses in elementary ed at all. And so she's having little fits because her principal is telling her one thing and we're telling her we won't recommend her. And so she's like, I've invested the money in taking these tests, and now you're telling me I can't be certified. And I said, not through us, because you haven't had the any elementary ed classes at all. So, but when I have a principal arguing with her, her principal telling her it's okay, that's making us a little crazy. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've awakened Krista's all caps mode in the chat. And she goes, some of this is, yes, the education of our administrators too, and the things that the goofy things that they think are true occasionally. Yeah, not all administrators by any means, but yeah. But yeah, you're seeing it in different places. Yeah.
Well, and we advised her then, if she wants to add that, to go through an alternate route program to be allowed to do what they need to do to get the rest of the elementary ed. We did tell her what it would take for her to do it through Ferris, and she's not happy with that number of credits. So we said, well, then you have an option. And so we do share that with them. But yeah, when you have your principals telling them it's okay, and then the EPPs are the ones that are the bad guys because we're not willing to do it.
Right.
So
yeah, you're right. There's a market, and there are other stores in the market and alternative routes that can do it. And I think sometimes even though we work really hard to put the information as clearly as possible on the website, there are still those that believe the alternative route is just, well, go test and then they'll give you your cert. Well, they sort of do, but there's other things involved there, and it's not for free. So, and it's certainly not, it's certainly not the Michigan Department of Education's alternative route that is blessing candidates for this, that they have to go to other alt routes, because that's a big question we get. It's like, I want to go through your alternative route. I'm like, okay, here's 10 choices. Talk to one of them. We've also started getting, and speaking of strange things people believe, people who've written to us saying, I have been told there is a way for me to get certified without taking a test. So please show me where that way is. Because that's what my principal was telling me. I don't know what you're talking about. But I'd like to find out who you're talking to that is telling you that, so that we can correct it. So
that was me. Sorry, I didn't have my camera on. I just want to reiterate this. My mind is blown. Our understanding that a student had to take the elementary test that matched their program. So the PK 336 had to be in the new program, 103 old program. So you're telling me because we have a number of students that can't pass 103, we've been giving them all these supports, they can take the PK 336, and if they pass the test, we can certify them, because the programs are slightly different.
yeah, if you've got the confidence that,
oh, that's the key piece there.
Yeah,
yes,
you have to know that, whether that is they have to have done some additional coursework, whether it's a standards aligned portfolio, whether it's just, because the things that are being assessed here are things that were already in some of our courses, then yeah, you can make that transition for folks.
okay, that's great. Some of them have been substitute teaching for a couple of years, so they've got a lot of experience, hands-on experience that they've been exposed to. So, but we just didn't know that was an option. So thank you.
Yeah, and Bridget's not online today, so I'll listen to her displeasure with my advice later. No, we've talked about this internally.
Very good. Thank you so much.
I have a similar question. So in looking at the grow your own application in particular, this brought this to mind, and I didn't do anything with it because we got asked for those MOUs like days before it was due. So I wasn't going to mess with any of this, but what latitude do we have, if any? So I was surprised to see on there that we should be reviewing prior work experiences and those sorts of things to determine whether we could count those for credit. Now, I don't think we have a mechanism to do that in our university, but if we did, can we just say, well, you don't have to take some of the courses that are in our approved program? Is that a choice?
Yes, you can waive courses for somebody if you can document and you apply this same process across the board to, that this is a thing that you would apply to any candidate or is available to any candidate, you can waive approved courses based on a demonstration of competency. You can grant, credit, experience-based credit for those courses. There's an enormous amount of flexibility there, but it depends on whether the university has that kind of a policy in place to allow for it. Because I know some universities don't have anything. There's no option for competency-based credits or demonstrations of work experience that then turn into credits. And there are other universities. Reach University comes to mind because I just met with their CEO on Monday. It's all demonstrations of competency that get turned into credit. So just a thing that can be done. But again, you've got to document it. You should know which standards are aligned in each course, and if you've got some consistent protocol for saying, okay, you've met the standards that are all in this, then you can move forward.
Sean, we've got a couple issues that are similar to that, but where people during COVID opted not to do their student teaching, but have degrees from other universities. And then are now asking whether or not we can just do their internship for them. And we've had it from 2 different universities at this point. And at this point, I've said for the most part, we could work with your previous university and host you for your internship if they would accept that, but you did not take your coursework here. And other than an MTTC score and a transcript, I'm not sure that we've got enough evidence to prove, and I don't feel comfortable with us recommending them fully. And so I wasn't sure if that was even an option for us and like that. So I don't know if anybody else is running into that too. It seems to be more COVID related, where they just had to drop out for a while and now are coming back.
We've had it at Oakland as well before COVID. Some of them we suspect were, they graduated without student teaching or the ability to be certified at other universities. And of course, we can't see that on their transcripts the majority of the time. Some of them may be COVID related. We have a minimum number of credits that they have to complete in our program. So that's one way of saying we can't accept you just for student teaching. You have to have this number of credits, and we also need to be able to see you and your character and how you perform. So you can't just come in and student teach. That in a nutshell, that's basically what we tell them a little more eloquently.
We do the same at Ferris. We usually make them take 1 or 2 courses the semester before. We'll do that so that we can see them. And it's usually a field-based class where they're out in the field for some of their hours so that we can see before that we put them in student teaching that they're kind of competent in the field. So just because you had coursework, and we had one student recently who we actually did that for, and she was excellent during her field experience. And then we just put her, she's in student teaching right now, but that's what we do. So we just tell them, we won't just let you do student teaching with us if you've taken nothing else with us. So we have that requirement.
So one of the things, though, I think these are important, but talking about waiving versus giving credit are 2 very different things.
Right.
And the credit granting part is a university decision, and there's HLC requirements. Having had to write that part of an HLC report, make them really clear because you want to make it easy for the report writer. But I think that you can have those conversations about what those credits by experience. I know we've been doing that here. But then waiving, they still need the total number of credits you require for your undergraduate. So you can waive all you want, but they'll still need 120 or 124 credits. And so thinking about that and how that works with dual enrollment in particular, are you going to count those as credit that students are doing teacher cadet, or can you count that as something that's waived when they come in? And I think you at MDE don't care whether we waive or we count, as long as we account for it, that knowledge, that we account for that knowledge being that the students demonstrated it, whether it's through competency ideas or through the curriculum.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, as I understand it. Good. Okay.
I don't know if I was hearing a very low volume comment or question, or if it was background from an open mic somewhere, but I don't want to ignore it. But I turn it to Marcia, looking at our agenda, and got some job lifetime coming up.
Yep, we've got some Java likes coming up. Why don't we still plan on trying to move into Java likes at 1:40 just to keep people on schedule, but knowing that some people are going to want to refill coffee cups or like that. Brian, the best way for us to move into our Java likes? Welcome back, everyone. We will kind of start the share outs. So Beth, thank you for volunteering to do it for deans and directors. I'll just go down the list here. Beth, you're muted.
Thank you. Now I say I have to go back and forth between the notes and the Zoom screen. So the first point of conversations with others might have been talking about was some of the challenges and the noticings and the work with the Grow Your Own applications. One of the things that came up that I thought was that we feel is important to share is that there are ways for people to kind of create their own Grow Your Own, in a sense of taking advantage of the $10,000 fellowship that could be available. And then Kate brought up that that those applications, if people who want to get the $10,000 must apply for FAFSA by March 1st. So this is some information that it wasn't on my radar, so we thought we'd bring that up. That's particularly problematic for some of our programs because transfer students for the fall might not be applying until after March 1st and might not have taken advantage of FAFSA. So the second thing that was brought up, and I understand this might be in conversation in other groups, was the CAPE change in definition for completer, or our perceived change in their definition, where a completer of a teacher preparation program is a candidate who successfully satisfies all program requirements of a preparation program at least 6 months previously, and who is employed in a position for which they are prepared for state licensure. So the employment part becomes a little bit of a, it isn't how it's been operationalized earlier. And so we're curious how people are rectifying or using that and getting that information. And as I understand it, this is also for the annual report. So if you're thinking, oh, phew, my CAPE report isn't due for 4 years, so I can figure that out. Nope, it's April. And then there was a lot of conversation about what it means to do a registered apprenticeship and the ways that we could develop and work with those. And Sean was quick to point out that it is predicated on strong partnerships, and programs that you have that maybe are adaptable are a way to go. And that a lot of there are quite a few programs out there that could be adaptable for the apprenticeship. And then finally, we talked about our partners with the community colleges and how the community college folks are interested in teacher preparation, and there are a group that are thinking that we aren't cooperating with them in the ways that they feel that would be as productive. We shared, each of us has our own examples of that counter that argument, but we really have to be more intentional about the way that they're talking about it, and within themselves are talking about ways of having students get degrees and take advantage of the alt routes and that type of thing. So just to have that on our radar. Is there anything I missed, people, from our conversation that I think we should brought up?
There was one other point that we all kind of talked a little bit about, addressing the mentorship requirement and the MTTC support.
Oh, that's right.
And that ongoing support past certification and for those first years of teaching, and how are we going to develop strategies for that and also be able to afford it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Accreditation and assessment.
I'm the lucky person who gets to do that today. Hi, everybody. We also started our conversation with the CAPE, CAPE annual report, completer definition change. What's really interesting is right before that breakout, I had to leave this meeting for a few minutes to go to a CAPE meeting. And I wish I could have really heard that conversation and then taken it the other way, because I could have brought it directly to Bonhee. So what we were told is that Bonhee told us there was no change between last year and this year. And there's no change in the technical manual between last year and this year. So I'm going to be sending them a clarification question via email, and I will send it out. Oh, Beth has her hand raised too.
The thing that I read is from the glossary on their website. I pulled it up.
Okay.
So the glossary on the website does say that 3 months and employed for that time. So that's, and it feels like a change to me too.
Yep.
But a leads training is next week or in 2 weeks. So we'll probably get some guidance there too.
Okay. I'm also going to send a clarification question to Melina and Bonhee and just kind of get some guidance on this, because it is a change of how everybody's been conceptualizing that data. And I think institutions need a little more time to be able to make that kind of adjustment, especially, before an annual report that's due in April. So I will be checking in with that. The CAPE reviewer process, usually they have limited us to only a few reviewers to be trained every year. I think that's because they used to pay for it all and send people places, and now they have it virtually. So they have opened it up they've opened it up for anybody. We have a link. The link came out through the CAPE. If you get a CAPE email, they have it there. And then I'll put this in the chat. It's also in the breakout report. But you can share this link with anyone. Anyone can sign up to be a CAPE reviewer. Training will be, I believe, this summer. It's virtual, and it's pretty good training. So that's something to be available to share. The fall 2023 is all virtual for CAPE visits, and we have CAPE visits coming up in the fall for, we have UM Ann Arbor, CMU, Madonna, Calvin, and Northern Michigan. We have 2 visits coming up this spring that are very close. Send all your good energy to SVSU and Albion, and those 2 visits are this spring. There will be a fall in-person conference for CAPE this year at DC. So that's another thought if you want to learn more. And then we kind of talked about the CPAST pilot. There's a lot of people involved, and it's kind of exciting right now. Everybody's at a kind of a different stage of adopting this tool and starting to use it or already using it. That will be a session, a breakout session that's available at the Hope Conference. So check that out if you want more information. The Hope Conference is back on. We're very excited about that. We're encouraging everybody to go with that. And then we had a discussion about the differences between CAPE and AQUEP. And there's going to be an opportunity with a AQUEP pilot panel and maybe some representatives from AQUEP at the Hope Conference as well, if anybody would like more information about that.
So clinical placement and coordinators.
Hi, I'm Jane Gensink from Calvin University, and I have this lucky job of reporting out. So our conversation was centered pretty much on some logistical stuff related to clinical placements. The first being the stipend and how that is playing out for each of us at our different universities. There continue to be some hiccups or just everyone's still learning the pathways, and a few students who are not eligible anymore, particularly because of being placed in a non-public. And we talked a little bit about that and how we can support those particular candidates. We hear the first payment is coming in the next couple of work days. So students will be excited to hear that news as well. The second logistical thing that we talked about was just an increased need for subbing and implications that has on our interns as they're trying to manage really taking student teaching as a student teaching experience with an expert teacher in the classroom, but also knowing the needs are pretty great for the districts. So trying to balance and help our students balance that. Third thing we talked a little bit about were some of the different steps to prepare and orient our students for the clinical placement. Few universities were able to share some of the strategies they have, which includes active shooter training, school safety training, and then also talked a little bit about clearance requirements for candidates as they move out into the field. So we're seeing an increase in all the schools expecting fingerprints and sometimes requesting those more frequently than they did previously. And then our final conversation was a little bit about placements, both how distance where we're placing students, requests that are greater from the university campus and how we accommodate that. And then the implications that has for the supervision piece. It was great to hear as some of our universities that are in more rural areas or have trouble finding supervisors throughout the ask, hey, does anyone have supervisors to share? And sure enough, there were folks that said, yep, we'd be willing to collaborate. So I think that captures real quickly what our group talked about.
Wonderful, thank you. And certification officers. If somebody is speaking, you might be muted.
Sorry about that. I took some notes. If you guys want to jump in, feel free to do so. So for the certification officers, we opened up asking questions about, those who are transitioning from one of the institutions was transitioning from a 5-year program to a 4-year program. And there were some questions about handling the exit survey when teacher candidates still have a course or so to take the following semester after that. And there was discussion regarding some institutions saying that we used to not allow teacher candidates to have additional courses after student teaching or after the internship, that the internship should be the last semester. And that evolved into discussions about the MTTC, whether or not to require it before student teaching. There was also some discussion about the completer survey, and the candidates having to show the schools that they completed the survey, of course, before they can get recommended for certification. In certain instances where candidates failed to complete the survey or didn't get the link, some EPIs contacted Dana and asked if they could have a little bit more time to reopen the survey. This discussion went into pre-K 3 and 3-6, what institutions were offering both, what institutions were offering one, and if somebody with a pre-K 3 certification, will the state allow them to teach in 3-6? And we had that discussion about the state will allow it. I think that was along the lines of just trying to cover those areas, especially for rural areas and things like that, that may not have teachers that certified in specific areas. Other questions was how do we handle grade span changes when the candidate goes out of state? We were basically told, a lot of states are going through teacher shortages, so they're desperate for teachers. So don't worry about the grade span changes too much for educators moving out of state. We also talked about, see here, what happens after our candidates finish all the program requirements and still, can't seem to pass that MTTC. Are we reaching out to our alum and offering them some assistance? And what assistance can we offer them when we have a candidate that's taken the test 8, 9, 10 times? So we talked about some study materials. I think it was Mometrics. We talked about the Pearson study materials and the Pearson practice tests. We also talked about what happens with, we have one of our schools, their first cohort of the new grade span will be finishing this spring, but that MTTC for early childhood education is not offered to the summer. So we talked about what we're going to do for that. Did I miss anything, group? Did I cover everything? I'm sorry. Everything? Anybody?
It sounds like you got everything.
No, Deb, I think you've got it, Deborah. That was what we covered.
All right, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, everyone. And again, welcome to the new people that have joined us this time. We're looking forward to seeing all of you in Holland at the HOPE meeting. Both the Dartep meeting and the meeting that precedes it will be really helpful for all of us in all of these roles as we move forward. Also going to encourage you, I heard a lot of questions today, and we might need to get more using the Dartep listserv to pose some of these questions more frequently and get more group thinking on some of it. And so I would encourage you to use the Dartep listserv to pose questions for the whole group or to find out how people are doing and reach out to your colleagues, because we're all in this together and we're all trying to get information. And so the more we can share through the Dartep listserv and like that, I think we'll also strengthen all of our programs and support all of us, because we're not wondering about these things in isolation. We are a community, and let's use the resources we've got to build that community. But with that, I'm going to say enjoy the rest of your afternoon and have a wonderful weekend and a safe weekend.
Marcia, thanks for a great Dartep. That took a lot of work in preparation for it. It was a very busy day, so good job. Congratulations on a great meeting.
Thank you.